We'll talk about that later. It's like, Kansas State.
but I will unmute.
Start again.
I am unmuted. Okay. I was going to say I am unmuted. Okay. Well, welcome everybody on the live stream. Sorry you didn't hear us. We're having a little bit of technical problems, but we are going to go ahead and push on forward. I was mentioning to everybody that's present that this is our last Abtel meeting for this year. We will have another one in September sometime. That will be decided during this meeting. We do have a fairly brief meeting, but some important items nonetheless to be decided and talked about. I will go ahead and turn this over to our president here, our chair.
Good morning, everyone. I'll say it again. Good morning. Fantastic. Happy, marvelous Monday. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. And you should have received a electronic version of the agenda as well as a paper copy provided outside at registration. With that being said, we'll go ahead with the approval of the agenda. That does require a motion in a second.
Test. Can you hear me? We do need to make an adjustment on the agenda. Move from the first presentation to the third, and move our early childhood presentation to first, if that's okay with everybody.
So do we have a motion to adopt the agenda with flexibility?
So moved.
Motion's been made and properly seconded to adopt the agenda with flexibility, moving our first presentation to third and our third presentation to first. Without objection, we'll adopt the agenda with flexibility as noted. Again, without objection. Okay, the agenda is adopted. Next, we have the approval of the minutes. And I will step sideways so he can project those for you.
You should have received those as well, but I will put them up on the board here for us. And I will go through, I'll just scroll down slowly. So in case you did not receive them or you did not have time to read them, you have a second here to read them.
Question?
Under item number 1 on presentations. Oh, sorry.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Item number 1 on presentations is talking about Abtel updates and changes. And one of the sections towards the bottom of the first page, it's talking about Mr. Gilstrap speaking on meeting times and locations, and it says he was reviewing the cost. That last sentence, it says there are facilities in the Commonwealth that is less cost effective. Do you mean more cost effective?
Yes. There are less cost effective
there
ones as well.
I'm sure there are.
There's a better deal up there. There's things that are cost less or free. So yes, that needs to be amended.
That's what you meant. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other changes? Hearing and seeing none. Move to accept the minutes as amended. Without objection. Move it, Shelby. Okay, motion's been made
Second.
and properly seconded. Without objection, we'll adopt the minutes as amended. Without objection. Minutes have been accepted. Next, we have public comment, of which there's no public comment
None,
that I know of.
okay, yeah.
So do we have any public comment at this time? Okay, hearing none, we will go ahead with our first presentation on new special education, early childhood, and on endorsement and potential regulation adjustments by Aaron Carroll, our Assistant Superintendent, and Don Hendricks, Coordinator, Mark Allen, PDG Project Manager. Thank you.
We are actually blessed to have our deputy assistant superintendent, Jenna Conway here to do the presentation, and I'll bring up your presentation. Thank you so much for coming. This is a very important and exciting topic, so we're so glad you're here to present. Let's see. That's not you. That's not you. This is you. Okay. I think you're good.
Wonderful.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Rob. Good morning. Good morning. And I appreciate the reordering of the agenda. I have a 9-year-old who needs to get to the orthodontist this morning. And well, you know, this is an absolute priority. So is the thousands of dollars on her teeth to, you know, make enough space for all of them. I appreciate the warm welcome. I'm joined here today with our Assistant Superintendent, Aaron Carroll, who will be our lifeline if there are questions, but really thankful for the body for hosting us. As I'll talk about in the next few slides, we are working across the Division of Early Childhood Care and Education, which now in Virginia, thanks to a law passed in 2020, encompasses family child care, Head Start, early Head Start, mixed delivery, and early childhood special education, and state pre-K. And we've been working really hard in the last 5 years to elevate all of our birth to 5 experiences, making sure that they are serving all of our kids, particularly those that are furthest from opportunity, including our kids with developmental delays and special needs. And there have been some significant workforce challenges as we are looking at how do we make sure that every child has access to an inclusive environment with typical peers. And that really hinges on making sure that we have enough prepared educators. And in doing so, we've uncovered what we think are some policy needs and some shifts around either pursuing, and it really can be a both and, pursuing a special education add-on endorsement for folks who've got a license and bachelor's degree, and a potential revision to the initial endorsement, which has a higher bar than many of its equivalent peers. But before jumping into solutions, I always think it's useful to frame what we see as the problem, and to make sure that we're kind of sharing that data and information with you all, so we're all on the same page. As you know, at the Department of Education, if you've ever heard me speak, we have the same kind of common true north. We want to make sure that every child has the opportunity to come to kindergarten ready. Each fall, in partnership with the University of Virginia, we evaluate all kindergartners coming in. We look at literacy, math, social skills, and self-regulation. We do see that our 2/3 of our children with special needs or developmental delays are coming in not ready in at least one of those areas. And so we've been working really hard with the field across all of the public-private settings to improve those experiences, so that all kids have the opportunity to come to school ready. As part of that process, we're also making sure that we're identifying children as early as possible. And so you see, and we're serving more children than ever before. So we think for those reasons that we're seeing a pretty significant increase in the number of children that are identified earlier in the process. Again, a focus on finding more kids, and then just overall, just as point of reference, in 2018, we probably served just under about 19,000 kids on VPI. Now we're about 25,000 kids. We served 20,000 kids with child care vouchers. Now about 45,000 kids with child care vouchers, 500 kids on mixed delivery, now about 2,500 kids. So we're really, as we cast a broad net, also really making sure as kids come to our system that we are identifying those children that have disabilities or developmental delays. We've also, as we've gone and worked and expanded VPI in the last few years, including serving 3-year-olds for the first time in the Commonwealth, recognize that we still have classrooms that are self-contained, that only include children with special needs. When they have a VPI classroom down the hallway, where there might be an opportunity for kids to have a more inclusive learning experience. One of the things is we've talked to VPI coordinators, special education coordinators, school principals, other folks at the division level, kind of what is preventing us from providing more inclusive settings for these young children. And they say part of that is the licensure and making sure that the teacher in the room has the appropriate licensure in order to best meet the needs of the kids with special needs or disabilities or delays. And so that's been a delay. So as we've tried to, and basically, without getting into the weeds of it, we've been able to maximize every state dollar for VPI in recent years, right? So anybody who said, I want to serve more VPI kids, we've been able to, even if you didn't receive enough slots in the formula, we're able to take them from one place and pop them to another. And we've been doing that kind of in concert with our early childhood special education coordinators in the effort that you might combine those classrooms and create an inclusionary experience where that child might have the opportunity to learn among their typical peers, and their typical peers have the opportunity to learn with all types of kids, right? Because that's a valuable learning experience for both sides. We're just hitting some roadblocks when it comes to making sure we have enough adults with that endorsement or otherwise licensed to educate our children with special needs. So this is a top shortage. It is hard, I know, across the board, between the Literacy Act and all the early childhood work, VQB5 and this, we continue to see early elementary education and special education as top critical shortage areas. This is not just a new phenomenon. This has really been true for the last 5 years. And so what we're seeing is a significant percentage of either positions vacant or folks are out of their endorsed areas. Dawn Hendricks, who couldn't be here today, who leads early childhood special education work, often talks about the frenetic call she starts getting right about now up until the start of the school year from school divisions who are said, we're doing child find, we found a certain number of children, we have an obligation, a legal obligation to serve these kids, but we literally cannot find enough teachers with this endorsement or with the proper license. And then we call and we say, hey, you've got VPI slots. Is there any way to take that self-contained classroom and think about integrating these experiences? They said we would, but we have 2 VPI teachers who don't have the endorsement or are not properly licensed, right? And so you're stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to these 2 scenarios. So right now, our current routes to obtaining the endorsement do not easily enable existing teachers. And we have phenomenal teachers in early childhood and VPI. And one of the cool things about our space is, 3 and 4-year-olds present a different scenario. You don't have a lot of secondary teachers who are like, let me get in there and, get on the floor and, move frequently from activity to activity. You could try to sit them at tables like this, but I promise you it'll be frustrating for you and for them. So we have these phenomenal teachers and who also educators who understand development as a spectrum, right? I mean, how much a 3-year-old changes from 36 to 47 months is pretty dramatic, right? And particularly when you think about the developmentally flexibility and fluidity of this age group, we think a lot of our teachers are very close to being well suited to support our kids with disabilities and developmental delays. Unfortunately, our policies basically say you either have to complete a program, you have to have a major, not even if you have a major in early childhood education, but you have to have a separate major in early childhood special education, or you have to complete 27 graduate hours. And that is, as I'll talk about in a second, the real distinction. We are always in support of additional specialized education, but requiring folks to do graduate hours compared to some more flexibility there is really what we're hearing is the primary barrier for our top-notch early childhood trained teachers who simply don't have the time and capacity to go back to graduate school while they're kind of working as VPI teachers. So as I just sort of alluded to, we have some folks who go all the way through, and those are our kind of current teachers who have that special education, either major and endorsement. We have some top-notch programs across the state. But what we're really struggling is our early childhood system grows. So again, as you think about it, in some places, we're nearly doubling the number of kids served with public dollars. We're really struggling to kind of keep up in terms of the educators and the educators who endorse to work with kids with special needs. Now, the general curriculum requirement can obtain through sort of 15 semester hours, but in sharp contrast, the special education early childhood is 27 semester hours and it's graduate hours. It has the word graduate in there. And so that is really what we're hearing from the field as the barrier, that folks are not opposed to some specialized education, but that many hours, and particularly that many graduate hours, is truly the barrier because you cannot count any undergraduate classes. Oh, yep. Oh, yeah. I'm sure. I don't know how to do that, but I'm sure somebody does.
It moves just by grabbing it.
Awesome.
That better?
It was like, it's like I was trying to make sure it's a Monday morning, your brain working, right? You had to fill in the gaps. Yeah, no, that's and let's see next. Oops, did I just lose my moving? Let's see how do I click. There we go. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Okay. So two potential solutions to this challenge that we would like this body to consider this morning. I think the first is, now we're blocking through that. So it's create a new special education early childhood add-on endorsement. So the first is really looking at an add-on endorsement that is similar to what is available for other grades or areas. And so we have a special education general curriculum. This is the K-6 add-on endorsement we've seen, and Dawn has talked to her colleagues who support K-12, made it possible for our elementary educators to add special education to their license. And that has helped address still some shortages, as I talked about in that early data, just on the crunch on elementary. But we wanted to ask this body to contemplate a similar effort or pathway for early childhood. And sort of thinking about, could you develop an add-on endorsement? We work with Assistant Superintendent Gilstrap and the team, both in terms of the regulations and the education programs, but kind of, starting to pursue or look at, could you create an early childhood equivalent to what you right now have for K-6 as a way to really address what is truly sort of work for Virginia is a little bit unique. Some of you might know, because we started serving kids with special needs before IDEA was passed. We actually served some 2.5-year-olds up, and then mostly sort of 3, 4, and then you age at 5. But kind of creating a similar opportunity for us to serve 2s, 3s, and 4s in our school settings, and for our licensed educators to be able to add that endorsement. Rob, I'm not sure on your protocol here, if we want to open it up for questions or discussion, or how we kind of do a motion to move on kind of whether there's an interest in exploring this.
Probably wait for the motion to.
Okay.
Questions.
Okay, perfect. So let me pause here and see if there's kind of questions on what we could be a motion to allow us to kind of move forward in exploring an add-on endorsement in this space. Yes. Yeah.
So you're asking for this endorsement only for, oh, sorry, you're asking for this endorsement only for pre-K?
This, what we would propose that this body allow us to look for is at creating a version of this for, yes, for early childhood, for 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, and 4-year-olds that are served in our public school settings for those licensed educators.
No, ma'am.
Oh. That was all I
But can you repeat your question?
yeah.
So we can capture it online? Thank you.
I was just asking whether what you're requesting was only for pre-K.
Yes, yes. We're creating a pre-K equivalent to what we have right now for K-6. Yes.
Is it not possible to just amend an existing endorsement rather than creating a new one?
That is a great question. I don't know what would be, I suppose we could look at both pathways. It still would be a regulatory change. So you could make that as, we could sort of reframe the motion to kind of do both of those, look at whether you could expand a current one. Janelle's got a point here.
Not a question, more so a statement to your question. I think it would behoove us to do the add-on because it would open up more opportunities for those individuals that actually have the I won't call it the prerequisite in order to add that particular endorsement on. If you change the program, you're still limiting yourself to individuals that go through that program. But if I'm a teacher and I'm already in the field, I want to change my, my teaching and credentials, then I can just go back and take these few courses to add on. So then we're opening up the pool of teachers.
I should know, I think we also, and obviously we have it's a wide range, grade band, even the pre-K to 6. I think part of what we are seeing is the vast majority of our educators are folks who are certified in early childhood or have sort of had early childhood experience, right? So they might have a pre-K to 6, but they're not typically 5th and 6th grade teachers, right? They have, a few years under their belt at serving a 3- and 4-year-old, and thinking about with that, knowing you have that already, what are then the coursework you need? And so it does, as we explore this further, we want to look at kind of how do you make sure that folks have both the right understanding of the age group or the grade bands, we call them age versus grade bands, and then also thinking about the how do you serve kids with special needs? Yes.
Forgive me if you've already answered this. Would this add-on endorsement be eligible only for fully licensed teachers who already have gen ed elementary or fully licensed in another special ed endorsement area? Or could it be any fully licensed
You would
teacher?
have to be, it would be similar to the other add-on endorsements that you have, that you would have to be fully licensed in this particular area in order to tag. I'm sorry. It would be similar to the other add-on endorsements that you would have to be fully licensed in that particular area specifically in order to get the add-on.
Okay, that's what I was assuming.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Question,
I think you have to hold it really
Uh,
close.
a question related to the earlier comment. I would wonder, would it be viable to do both, have the 2 separate endorsements, but also have a combined one? So if someone does not already have the existing K-6, they may wish to seek an all-encompassing endorsement for pre-K 6 instead of having to attain 2 separate ones. I don't know if it would be viable, but I'm just wondering.
I see Janelle's brain
Yeah,
ticking,
yeah.
so I'm
Wheels turning.
just.
And again, I guess the real idea is that we were trying to use, we're trying to use people that are already in the field that have the expertise in that particular grade level, and then want to get the special ed piece. And so it's a different pool of people, but I guess the wheels are turning to figure out how we could do what you said.
Yeah, because I think the two separate endorsements certainly, but if there would be it might simplify it for those who would be interested in the larger pre-K 6. That's what's making me wonder if it would be possible.
As far as special ed,
Yes.
we already have, we already have those. We already have, endorsements that cover, full-blown, that cover special ed from pre-K through 6, the general curriculum.
Okay.
In thinking about the coursework in the degree program or in the coursework that would be required at higher ed, have you all considered what additional coursework or different coursework would be required for the pre-K folks, if any? Which would, for me, be why it would be separate from your current endorsement.
Everybody, yeah. Could you answer that one? I didn't even hear the whole full question. I'm sorry.
And I'm probably not the expert on the existing coursework. My understanding is this would be a subset of the coursework that's offered in the current full licensure, but I think this would really also be resolved throughout the process of building the add-on endorsement. And today we really just want to say there's a need. This is a good idea for us to investigate. And then, of course, we'll go through all the procedures and the regulatory process and work with higher ed partners to figure out exactly what it needs to be.
And I just jumped ahead in our appendices. We've got, there are a number of partners across the state who currently offer either undergraduate or graduate programs. And I think, again, really looking at, I think the first target audience, although I'm always open to expansive thinking, was thinking about folks who literally the situation is we've got, a VPI classroom that could take more kids and a self-contained classroom that's got a small number of children, and we can't integrate those settings because of the licensure, or we've got, a small self-contained classroom that can't get anybody in there, right, because of this. And so really looking at, folks who already have skills and experience in the early childhood space, but simply lack this. And we would want to work with our higher ed partners who have been doing this and have great. These guys run top-notch programs. I think it's just, it's the volume. And I've always sort of heard anecdotally as well, it's a tricky one around, as teacher candidates are coming in. I think there's a real, sort of cast as wide a net as possible around your sort of first cut, right? Get the pre-K to 6 because it gives you the most flexibility as you come out the other end of college with that license. And then folks get into the field and they're like, oh my gosh, I really like working with littles and I would like to work, in a classroom with all types of littles. And then they sort of hit up against that barrier. So we always, each year we have some folks who all the way come through, get the early childhood special education major and want to do that. And that's great. We're always going to have that portion. We're just finding that we need more folks who come through with the general license in early childhood and early elementary, and then need a way to go back and get that endorsement in a more efficient manner. I can tell you.
So forgive me, I don't know the normal process for increasing or doing an add-on endorsement. Is that legislative? Is that regulatory? Is that a combination thereof?
So I'm gonna call it a left one on the broader licensure office here, but my understanding is that if we could get this group's motion to move forward, that we would then begin to explore. It would certainly require amending the regulation. So I don't think we need a change in law. I think we just would need to work with the Board of Education to amend two sets of regulations. One is for school personnel, and then one is related to the review and approval of education programs. Does that sound right? Yeah. So regulatory, not statutory.
Check. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead to that. No, the legislators can do this very legitimately. We do have add-on endorsements that the legislators say, we want this, and what happens that way. But it doesn't have to happen that way. It can also happen through the regulatory process. And I would suggest that for the most part, we're talking here about regulatory process. And just a reminder, as we have one of our board members here, the purpose for this body is to make a recommendation to the board, and the board would make a decision on whether or not we were going to go forward with a regulatory process, open this up, or that they would disagree maybe and say, we don't believe that this is necessary, or maybe go a different route altogether. But we need to, it needs to come through here before it goes to the board, so that the board knows that it has been fully vetted and thought through. I think one of the things that is not necessarily in this presentation, but would be in the board presentation, would be what is missing. If you go this other route, what are you missing? Because if we're taking something out, something's missing, and if it's not missing, how is it captured in another way? So if the recommendation from this board is we would like this to go forward to the Board of Education, when we make the presentation to the Board of Education, we would definitely be showing more specifics of, if you take this away, here's where it's met somewhere else, or it is something that is met through experience. Especially when we're talking about a elementary teacher that has been teaching for 10 years, what might be missing from the actual formula they've gained through their experiences, and that might be a decision that would be made.
Do we have any data on, we created the early childhood add-on endorsement to pre-K through 6 and SPED. Do we have any data that shows how that add-on endorsement, when we created it, did it actually do what we wanted it to do?
I think we can get that.
Definitely can.
We do.
We do have some, as far as it relates to program completers and how many programs that we actually started with. So when we started that add-on endorsement, I believe like the first year we had 4 programs, that has increased to like 21. And so now we are seeing, I won't say the remnants, we should see program individuals that actually have gone through to get those add-ons in our next round of data that we got program completers for, Andy. Yeah.
Sure. Well, that's what I was getting at, is if we have some data that shows creating an add-on endorsement works, well then, I think it's fantastic. And if somebody will help me with the language, I will move it to a motion. So, yeah.
Can we wait till we get to all the presentations?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just because something that you might later go, oh, this other way is better, or this way ought to include this. So I just don't want you to make a motion not having the full information ready.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Well, with that, we'll take a moment and look at, while contemplating whether to recommend that we look at an add-on. We also wanted to put in forth for you, and these are not mutually exclusive, right? We've kind of, as we brainstormed with the team and licensure and teacher education and with the field, thought that there might be a couple of ways to package a solution for more pathways, while I think, as Rob noted, addressing kind of where they're, how we sort of are using experience to cover for gaps, and and making sure, again, that all of our educators are fully prepared. The other thing we wanted to put in front of this body is whether or not you would be willing to make a recommendation to the board about a revision in the current regulations for the early education, special education, early childhood endorsement, that would put it on par with some of the other endorsements and provide more flexibility to our teacher education students across the state. Right now, the licensure regulation, so this is regulations, not law, require 27 semester graduate hours in early childhood special education. And I had some question the team, and maybe Janelle knows, we don't know why. We literally, there's one of these moments where I was like, texting or working with the team over the last 2 weeks, I was like, I'm going to get in front of all these people, and we need to know why the word graduate was added. And we're not really sure why the word graduate was added as compared to other similar regulations for similar levels of personnel that allow for undergraduate or graduate coursework to be accepted. We don't know kind of why, if there's a particular need of these students or a particular context or something that happens. Some of you know that I oversee the other part of licensure, which is the childcare licensure, and literally every regulation in childcare licensure comes from something bad that happened to children, right? So like there's always a reason for it. And so I really pushed the team to say, what is the reason that years ago we sort of felt that graduate level coursework was needed instead of undergraduate or graduate coursework, the kind of flexibility we offer for other licenses, and we don't have a good answer. And so, you know, again, just the beginning of the process here, we can continue to kind of look for or sort of seek that historical record there. But what we are worried about is that across the different choices that a teacher education candidate has, like this just puts an additional barrier for, at least from our perspective right now, for no good reason. No kind of, okay, like why does this need graduate coursework? And that creates just another level of complexity for our institutes of higher education in terms of, you know, as you're thinking about the courses you're offering each year, what's undergraduate, what's graduate, your kind of your student body. And this also creates a barrier not only for folks who are pursuing this in state, but even folks who come to us from other states, right? Because this is, again, you know, I know it's not identical across the 50 states, but it's just, when you look at Virginia's regs, generally speaking, it's sort of X number of hours, could be undergraduate or graduate. And then they come to us and you're like, wait, you have to have all of these graduate hours. And that makes it harder for folks that are coming from outer state. It makes it harder for the provisional license if you're doing kind of multiple institutes of higher education. And so it's just this idiosyncrasy in our regulations that we cannot, at least at this point in time, figure out why and want to, whoa. There's ghosts in the system. That's very strange. Okay, let's.
It's done that a couple times.
Whoa, okay. So this again, what we are hearing from our institutes of higher education, and as you saw on that chart, and I'll go back to it in a second, we would see many more of our folks would be able to produce teachers with licensures that have this endorsement if they could obtain it through graduate or undergraduate coursework. And so you've got you know, more folks that are offering this that might not be offering the graduate coursework and who would be very excited to have more of their candidates take some of this coursework. This would you know, again, without understanding the reason, it's just one word that's in the regulation, but basically to allow for graduate or undergraduate coursework by not changing the hour requirement, but simply removing the word graduate. And it would keep all of the courses. It would sort of generally keep the same kind of content to for the endorsement, but just remove that additional requirement that it's graduate. And as a you know, sort of thing, you'll see that we kind of have that would allow us sort of the broadest spread of programs to be able to do this. You know, I'd also say, as folks are, you know, managing these programs, and I'm sure, you know, Janelle knows this better than anyone, right? It's always you know, trying to match the right level of coursework, who are the current candidates, even for those programs that happen like Mason, Madison, Liberty, who happen to have both graduate and undergraduate, you know, offering this flexibility gives them maximum flexibility as they think about their course schedules, their offerings each year. I know that we also heard from the field, it is a challenging, right? Particularly if you want to get maximize on your endorsement, you have, you know, 8 semesters, right? Kind of, you're trying to figure out the right courses is. We just think this is, again, keeps the core content the same, but offers our institutes of higher education and our teacher education candidates more flexibility while making sure that they are fully prepared when they come out. So let me pause here and see what questions we have or comments from the audience.
Thank you. Can you go back to that slide you just had just prior to this?
This
That one?
Yeah.
Do we know why? I have a few questions actually. Do we know why Old Dominion and all those in the list with George Mason have chosen to do undergraduate and graduate as opposed to Norfolk State and those on the bottom? Because I'm trying to figure out what the difference is. Is it an enhancement? Is it a higher level of learning? And the particular problem we're trying to solve here.
I'm going to defer to Janelle here as our fearless head of teacher education.
So in our regulations for approved program, it does not give any stipulations whether it's graduate or undergraduate. And if you know, we've moved to more undergraduate programs in the last few years for everyone. And so they just offer, it's just having an option for individuals, whether they want to do it the undergraduate or the graduate, and they have the capacity to offer both of those levels. So, and then it's just an option. That's just pretty much what it is, that they're able to offer those options for individuals at both levels. And so when we look at Norfolk, and I'm gonna use Norfolk State as an option, that program has been there. They haven't transitioned to an undergraduate program. And many of the programs that do have graduate programs are now transitioning and having, creating undergraduate education programs as another option for them, because it's more cost effective. Does that help answer?
Some of it relates, right, Janelle, to the period of time in which you couldn't sort of
Yes.
get the
Yeah, there was a
general
period of time,
education
that you
undergraduate.
couldn't
And so
have the
folks had
undergraduate
focused on the
degree.
graduate, and now we're seeing a trend in the opposite direction. Really, with at least what we're hearing from the field is people are trying to kind of maximize their employment options, get this sort of, the most cost-effective degree with maximum flexibility. And a lot of that is at the undergraduate versus, the graduate level.
So if if it's already an option, what are we trying to fix with this?
So
proposal?
the goal here is, even though they offer those programs, it's still, as you're thinking about kind of the coursework, that there's a higher barrier. Like we're saying that for Liberty, Mason, all these ones, you cannot count any of that undergraduate coursework towards that 27 hours. It has to be 27 hours of graduate coursework. So that's just a higher barrier for this particular endorsement relative to the other endorsements that allow either or, undergraduate or graduate. So, and particularly, as Janelle was alluding to, as folks are offering more and more high quality undergraduate coursework, because we no longer kind of prohibit you from doing on a education coursework in the undergraduate space, it just means that they can't take those courses and have them count. They might be great courses, they can take them, they can count more broadly towards their degree, but they can't actually count them towards this endorsement. If you are an undergraduate at Norfolk State and you have access and the graduate schedule works, like there's no difference there. I think it's ultimately our hope that more places like Norfolk State, Lynchburg, VCU, and even others would be, I think, in that transition also offering undergraduate if they have, sufficient candidates that are interested in doing it. It's really kind of saying, when we look at these candidates, how do you give them the maximum set of hours that could count towards that endorsement versus limiting it to just a slice, when we don't do that for our other endorsements.
Would this also open up the door for maybe some of the coursework being read at a community college?
Is that?
Oh, no, because there's only certain coursework that we accept from the community college, and it would not be geared toward the specific content area as early childhood.
I guess my last question is, I'm trying to understand this world of endorsements, which is not a world where I personally live. So let me just start there. But I'm trying to understand, kind of how we got here, who we're encouraging, how we're monitoring what effectiveness we're having, or are we just getting this guidance from perhaps whoever institutes a higher education of what they would like to do, which I don't have a problem with. I'm just trying to see how we are making sure that we're effective and evaluating the changes we make.
That's a great question. I'm going to defer more broadly in terms of to Janelle on how we evaluate our teacher education programs.
Well, I don't really think that's my question. Yes.
So when we look at our programs, we have two sets of regulations. We have the approved program regulations and we have the personnel regulations. Right now in our personnel regulations is stipulating that there have to be graduate courses. In our approved program regulation, it does not say that. So you got two different ways. So if an individual decided, I'm not going to go the approved program route, I'm going to take coursework in order to get my endorsement, but that coursework would have to be graduate level coursework on this side of the house in order to do it. But at an approved program, it can be either or. And so what we're trying to do is have an alignment. The regs are not aligned. They need to be aligned in order for us to do, it just makes sense for them to be aligned. And I don't know how this came to be. I wasn't in that, I don't remember. But this has come up numerous times with individuals that are trying to get that endorsement added on to their license because they didn't take the graduate level coursework, but they could have done the undergraduate and an approved program. Okay, that helps. Okay. Mhm. Oh, I'm sorry.
The one last question is, what was guiding us when we made it graduate in the first place?
We don't know.
Right, like how, so that I'm trying to understand, I feel like I'm not able to evaluate this question if I don't understand why we are where we are and what the difference would be if we made it undergraduate.
From the higher ed side. So for higher education, you have to, for higher education, you have to have a degree to be able to confer that from the public institutions. So there was a time in the regulations when you had to have a master's degree in order to get the licensure. And when the General Assembly changed that, that may be when the regs were separated in the sense of what you approve as degree programs or endorsement areas, as you call them, and what Chev approves as a degree program. So you're asking, for example, about Norfolk State. So when the legislature said, okay, well, you can have a bachelor's degree and obtain licensure, Chev opened up to all the public institutions to develop undergraduate degree programs. The institutions had to choose based on their capacity, as Janelle noted, as their resources to be able to do that. So the reason, for example, Norfolk State may not have undergraduate coursework is because they don't have an undergraduate degree that was approved by Chev to be able to even confer a degree, and that would include that coursework. So that I'm hoping that gets a little bit at your question about why, for example, Norfolk State is a public institution. That may be why they didn't decide to do that degree program at the undergraduate level. This is different from when you all just call it endorsement areas, okay? Because the institution by Chev has to have the authority to confer the degree in the first place, okay? And then in terms of how they got there, like I said, let me go back. There was a time when only the master's degree was accepted. So because it was, that's where the coursework came in. Now, when DOE made some changes, they may have then created it so you could take undergraduate or graduate coursework, but the regulation may not have changed because when it was changed to only graduate degree programs, which includes the coursework, then at that time, undergraduate degree programs, nor could the coursework count. So I'm not sure if that's what happened at VDOE, but over in Chev's side, that would have been what would happen. You would have had, the institution would have had to have authority to confer a degree at the undergraduate level, which meant that coursework would have had to been established in an undergraduate degree program and not a graduate degree program, because you can't have undergraduate degree coursework in a graduate degree program.
Maybe just a little bit more context. Is that working? I don't have the full answers, but I think the broader swath is teaching generally. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, Virginia moved towards requiring graduate degrees for all teachers. If there's so many folks in this room who know better than me, so will correct me if I'm getting this wrong. But we moved in pursuit of high quality teaching across the board. We started requiring graduate degrees for all teachers, and then we rethought that with the legislature's guidance in the 2015, 2016 era. We started to recognize, number one, that we were beginning to have teacher shortages that have only accelerated since then. Number two, the cost of higher education going all the way through to a graduate degree was a barrier for many people wanting to enter the teaching profession. And, maybe if we designed our programs well, we could get teachers ready with an undergraduate degree only. So we've started so the General Assembly gave schools more permission an opportunity to develop undergraduate programs that would get teachers fully licensed through while an undergraduate. But it's taken the schools time to develop those undergraduate programs, and frankly, smaller programs, it might be harder. Do you have enough students to make it worth your while? So, I don't know why VCU, which is one of our larger programs, wouldn't have added it on, but Norfolk State, University of Lynchburg might be small enough that it might have taken them time to have added on the undergraduate programs as opposed to some of the larger institutions up at the top of the list.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's half speculation and half history.
All right. Any other questions, concern, comments? And I appreciate all the questions. It is complicated. And again, we are and it's, we're unclear on the why. I think as Board Member Holton noted, I think this has to do with what was a focus on graduate education at a point in time. But the real challenge right now is, as Janelle was describing, we spend a lot of effort approving programs, right? Which is upon completion of that program, you should be prepared to do the job, right? That is articulated. And then we have this conflict on the personnel regs that says that even though the approved program has been thought of, has been, designed to address the components and the capacity and the skills needed, that, we add this miscellaneous graduate requirement in a way that we just don't know why we got there. Yes.
So, and is that the extent of solution 2? Is it just graduate, or is there another change in solution?
No, it
2?
would be anything else. We would just,
Yeah.
we are confident in the state of our approved programs. We've got, we think the right courses, but, and again, the impetus for this, is really coming from some of our, not only our hired partners, but our school folks who are just saying that it just makes that a costlier and more complicated bachelor's grade to achieve. And so as they talk to folks who come out the other end, they're like, I didn't pursue that because I couldn't fit it in my 8 semesters or in the course of my undergraduate coursework. And, as Board Member Holton noted, I mean, with the teacher shortages and the challenges, we're trying to look as far upstream as possible. And how do we make sure that people are, it's, a both and are fully prepared to work with our little learners, with more pronounced needs, but also, if you make it more expensive and harder to schedule, then fewer candidates will pursue that.
So just a process question. If we were to, just thinking of your timing and this council's timing, if we were to adopt a general resolution today in support of exploring more flexibility towards meeting this need, then our licensure committee hopefully can work on some details and come back to Abtel in the fall. But the Abtel doesn't meet again until the fall. So does that work with your timing if we were able to come up with something that Abtel hopefully would be able to and potentially be able to move forward in the early fall?
We don't have another meeting until September. And so that's why we've got either today there would be some sort of recommendation going forward, or bring back more data in September. That'd be really.
So really the
critical.
question is, do we need to adopt something specific today? And is that realistic? Or can we adopt a general, we like the concept and let the licensure committee come back with something more specific later?
I mean, that's really what's up to this body. I mean, we would be inclined to, based on what we understand of the programs and the feedback that we've heard from the field, to move forward today. I mean, and I think some of what, some of the data that's been requested, we can continue to try to figure out exactly why the graduate was offered. We can also assemble, kind of look at the kind of undergraduate versus graduate coursework. This requirement is above and beyond, right? So like, if we want to address this issue, we would encourage probably sooner action rather than later. I mean, not that I'm opposed to chasing down the exact sort of why here, but we have other endorsements that don't require graduate coursework, and as Janelle noted, we've got a conflict in our current regulations.
So then I think then the only question is that the second solution is very specific.
Yeah.
The first solution
is very broad,
is a little broader. So if we were going to pass something today, we'd need some pretty specific language to come forward from.
Yes, and you could,
from the
a package. Rob wanted us to wait to the end, but I don't think we necessarily have to be all wrapped up into one motion. It could be two discrete motions if you wanted to treat them separately.
But but to get them through the regulatory changes, et cetera, they're going to end up together. Potentially. Maybe not.
Maybe I misunderstood something. I thought we were voting on whether for your committee to go forward and build something and bring it back to us, correct?
Yeah, that was
that is one option.
Yeah.
Okay, so you would bring it back to Abtel once it's created, once this new licensure add-on endorsement was created for us to look at.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's for I guess as we looked at the shortages being faced by the field and the kind of need as we grow the resources going to early childhood, particularly in schools, we tried to kind of brainstorm all of the potential solutions, right? That sort of looks at who are the current candidates, who are the people who are currently teachers, right? Mostly early childhood teachers, and looking at the add-on as a piece. They're not going to go back and get a full bachelor's degree. At the same time, as noted, right, we've had a transition to more and more institutes of higher education offering undergraduate, and we also would recommend for the teacher candidates, not the current early childhood teachers, that you would contemplate moving forward on removing the graduate hours requirement. So it's like two different populations. Recommendation one is about existing teachers and looking at an add-on endorsement that would be equivalent to what you have in K-6. Solution two, and they're not mutually exclusive, was around saying for the kind of current teacher candidates and the current higher education programs, can you move forward with now on a change in regulations that would enable you to offer more flexibility there?
I think we currently have a duplex problem. And to the point that's been brought up in this room several different times, it seems that we need to have more information from two different perspectives so that we can make a decision to solve the problem in unity. And I'm not sure that it's a recommendation that is going to be a very specific notation, but it needs to be specific enough that if we come back in September, you all can have more information so that we can look at both problems and solve them collectively, though that they kind of intersect and then they go their separate ways.
So I had a question.
I'm going to say something too quick.
Yes. So I guess I want to drill down a little bit as to why I'm asking these questions. I don't know at this point what is happening in other states to try to address teacher shortages. What other methods have they looked at? Has there been any exploration as to the effectiveness of this solution, or whether there are other solutions? And so I kind of feel like we're looking at this very much in a vacuum, which puts me, and maybe others feel more comfortable because this is your world. It's not necessarily where I live. And so that's why I'm asking the questions, because I just sort of feel that you're saying to us, we've talked to some folks in higher ed, and some students, and this is a recommendation, but that is so isolated kind of in a tunnel that it's hard for me to evaluate whether this is the way that we should move forward or whether we should have language that was just suggested that this is something we're exploring and we've looked at the field and this is why we've landed here. So I feel like I'm a little incomplete in being able to make that decision. Others may feel comfortable and I won't, certainly I'm not, I'm only one person.
I just want to also point out to everybody that since these are potential regulatory changes, we're not talking about something that would happen super fast. So if we made that decision today to move forward and make a recommendation to the board, we're still talking months and months away. That's part of the dilemma here. If we push till September, we're still months and months away. If we start today, we're still months and months away either way. So it's not like we're going to make a rash decision on any of this. It has to go through multiple steps before it can get there. One way you can view this as a recommendation for the board to pursue this. Another is you can say we want to have a full thought out language specific regulatory language to take to the board. And either way has been acceptable at different times. It kind of depends on the will of this body. And you at least have one person who's uncomfortable with a more relaxed approach to that. But we also might have people in here that are totally with that. So it doesn't have to go one way or the other. And it doesn't even have to go forward if that's the will of the board. Like, well, we just don't think this needs to be solved. But really, her presentation is about this is a problem that we need to address. Here are two possible suggestions. And to happen next. Do you want more information before you decide anything, or do you want this to be taken to the Board of Education probably this summer and let them make a determination if they want it to go the next level?
So my higher ed colleagues can help out here, but so what in the presentation we see that we have more students being identified and need more teachers who are qualified in this endorsement. So what we do is we look back on that road to see where the bumps are or the bottlenecks. And then with licensure, we decide, okay, is it the process of licensing? Is it the difficulty? Is it graduate level work or undergraduate level work? Is there a test associated with it? We try to pinpoint where it is that bottleneck is for getting more teachers certified. So then as a group here, we talk about it and see which of those kind of levers we can throw so that would allow more folks to get certified in that area. And yeah, part of it is that we don't know exactly why we put in graduate. My guess is that at that time, there was probably very, very few students who were identified. And we thought of those students who are identified, we probably wanted the absolute best folks working with them. But I don't know that. But now we're at that phase where we're trying to figure out which of these levers we could throw that would help reduce that bottleneck. The other problem with this is we're dealing with multiple ways to get to the same thing because we have regs for teacher prep programs and then we have regs for schools. And so this may be a time that we can align those as we're working on this so that things are more equal from one path to the other. So that may help some, it may not.
I appreciate that. I wanted to expand on that too, just from the world as we see it on our licensure side. John L. and I have talked about this before, where it's even highly likely that the terminology that added graduate level existed in the regs before. And then when the approved program regs changed, they just didn't look at the two different sets of regs. We run up against this a lot when we ask ourselves, wait, why are the approved program regs telling us one thing? Licensure regs are telling us something different. It wasn't that they contradicted each other at first. It's just that one changed and no one thought to jump into the other set of regs to change the other. I mean, this is actually a classic example. I think it's always fair to consider the second option. I do like that we're starting to separate these two out. One is about creating an endorsement. That is a different process, can take a little bit longer, can require a little bit more information. But the other, the secondary option here, it does, seem to accomplish something in the sense that we're just taking something that's already being allowed through undergraduate level approved programs. These are courses that are approved to accomplish the same endorsement at the undergraduate level. It's just if you're not completing it as part of an approved program and you're trying to complete it outside, all of a sudden the regs don't align and the licensure regs say it has to be graduate level. And so just removing that or just saying graduate or undergraduate level, the courses, like let's say a program doesn't have or a college doesn't have an undergraduate program for it yet, and then they see these regs change and they say, okay, let's create an undergraduate course to meet one of these requirements or to meet all of these requirements. They're still going to have to go through the approval process in order for those courses to be accepted by licensure, but at least it opens up the door. And then for these other colleges that already have approved programs, those courses are already approved at the undergraduate level. If we're able to align the regs to open it up for undergraduate coursework outside of an approved program, some of those courses already exist and they've already been approved. And so they're going to meet all the content requirements for the early childhood SPED. So I just like to look at it at two different ways and to see that the second option especially is worth looking at. And as Rob said, it's going to take a while even to consider opening up the regs and looking at this. But if we're able to consider it today, that at least just starts that ball rolling. Doesn't mean it would happen. That's certainly up to the board. But I think just looking at it in the framework of we're just aligning regs. These courses are already being offered, taken, and approved at the undergraduate level. It's just if you're not in an approved program, you're not really eligible to count those. And that's a problem.
Thanks, Brian.
I just want to second what Brian said. I do live in the licensure world and I have so many provisionally licensed teachers who are forced to take the graduate coursework, and ECSE teachers are my hardest to fill in the special ed curriculum. And as he said, they're already approved to take the undergraduate coursework if they're going through the state approved program. So I think your one proposal to just align the current personnel
Requirements.
licensure regs with what's already approved in the state approved program by removing the word graduate makes sense to me. And then coming back to us with a proposed curriculum for an add-on endorsement would be something we could review and take to the board. And I think that's an excellent option to bring back to us
In September.
give
Yep.
an add-on option for people that are fully licensed, because early childhood SPED is such a hard area to fill. And for my division, it's an area where we have such a critical shortage need. But I did just want to back what Brian said.
So it seems certainly two different audiences, two different types of proposals. Certainly the first one does need additional work, as Rob talked about, both identifying kind of, what it would look like, what's missing, if there was an interest in that, we could come back to this body. That is the one that is focused on current educators in the field and how you would, a new add-on endorsement. I think we also heard from this group the importance of looking at what else is out there, and is it a brand new add-on, or is there some way that we could leverage, an additional add-on? But that would sort of take looking really carefully at the underlying coursework and kind of making sure we're getting it right in terms of what we would want to feel confident that you could do as a result of kind of getting that add-on, and which children you'd be able to do with, right? So it sort of strikes that balance between making it, more accessible for our current teachers, but also ensuring that our current teachers are fully prepared, and looking at kind of what, other states have done as well. so potentially the motion there could be to, sort of do more work and come back to this group in September. Potentially then on the second, which is a more just sort of contradiction in regulations that we think is more of a historical artifact, allowing or recommending that we move forward to align the personnel and the program approval regulations would enable us to go to the board, and present that as really as an effort to kind of align across the board. So we're not saying one thing is expected of personnel and another thing is expected of the programs that prepare the personnel, and get that aligned, as Brian and as Shelley just alluded to, and we can move forward. It still has many steps, right? Because we'd have to notice it, and then it would have to go to the board, and then there's public comment and all of those steps. But it truly is an alignment issue that I think we would recommend, based on what we understand, that we would move forward on today if this body would support, while recognizing that there's still some work and we want to bring back to this body on that first recommendation around, what an add-on might look like, a brand new add-on might look like. All clear. Yeah.
Question?
For number 2 up there, you said special education or 27th semester and you scratched out graduate. Are we talking about the same or comparable classes at the graduate level as would be at the undergraduate level? We're talking about apples and apples as opposed to apples and oranges.
Yeah, because it's subject to the program approval. It'd have to be an approved program. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Should take okay. Rick, you don't need that.
Nope. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, while it is fresh in our minds, the last presentation offers us the opportunity to make recommendations to the Board of Education. And before taking a break, I would like to go ahead and decipher these 2 items. They were presented in Solution 1 and Solution 2. So I'd offer to you, if you would like to make a recommendation, that they be independent so that we can address Solution 1 and Solution 2 accordingly. So I'll give that to the body and open the floor to any recommendations and motions at this time. Mr. Cox.
If somebody will help me with the language here.
Sure.
because
So
We're really not doing solution 1 or 2. All we're doing is opening it up. So somebody will help me with the language. I'll move it.
they're 2, as 2 separate items.
The language for 1, then yes.
Okay, so I know that I had heard Member Holton with something really crisp for number 1 about presentation to the board. I want to make sure that I say this correctly.
So I don't think I can make a motion. I think we're non-voting members.
Right, but I want
can
to make sure
propose
I heard
On-
the
on
language
solution
correctly.
Number 1, perhaps the language could read that the board is supportive of the concept of developing an add-on endorsement for special ed pre-K and directs the licensure
Yes.
committee to come back to the full board with a detailed recommendation at our next meeting.
So that's what I heard Mr. Cox to say. Is there a second?
That's what I said.
The motion's been made and properly seconded. Is there any discussion?
Sorry, I want to make sure that we are clear on what we're saying. Member Holden just said that the
Mr.
licensure
Cox,
committee
Mr.
of
Cox.
this body would come back with information in September in the next meeting. So we are giving ourselves detailed work versus another idea that has been proposed. That's why I want to make sure that we're clear on what's being offered, which is that we pass this suggestion on and that it then goes to the VDOE's proper channels to further develop out this. Which, I mean, so those are two very different paths forward. So I want to make sure that we're saying the appropriate thing, because I'm not sure that the licensure committee of this body would produce something that is as detailed and purposeful as what the actual employees of the VDOE would do concerning this.
So Dr. Moffat, to the maker of the motion, I would say that the clarity is in subcommittee, should you meet, and then you find that this is beyond our scope, that recommendation could then still emerge from subcommittee to the licensure department at DOE to say, this is beyond our scope. Can you all assist us and bring information back in September?
I hear that, but I'm worried that there is an unnecessary delay of time
Okay.
moving forward as the motion is currently worded. So
So-
I would recommend a
So
motion
with the maker.
to amend that is currently on the floor.
To amend the motion to remove the licensure committee from Abtel to substitute VDOE. Do we have a department or what do you want?
The staff.
Staff
So I would
to
say to
conduct
the
the
maker,
research and prepare a presentation.
to be friendly.
Yes.
Okay, so substitute is accepted. Any further discussion? The question is, can you repeat it? So the question that is posed currently is that the Abtel licensure subcommittee do work towards the add-on endorsement, but that has now been substituted, that the licensure staff at DOE do work to the early childhood add-on endorsement and bring information back to the Abtel board at the September meeting to provide more clarity on what was presented today. So but y'all gonna have a presentation in September. This,
So the recommendation is not to ask the board to move forward.
yes. Okay. Yeah, it's just adding more information, and without me entering into debate, it's clarity at this point. There are several questions posted here. One of them was some statistics. What are some of the colleges, universities, what are they doing? What are other states doing? What does it actually look like from a different perspective? So I think a little more information next go around to help kind of ease some of those questions is more suitable and appropriate this time.
I hear you, and I just want to add, and I'm not a voting member, I'm just somebody here, but just for the regulatory process, I just want to just put that out there. I know Rob said that it takes a while. When we say takes a while, it could be years. Because we submitted, the last time we did open the regs in 2015, they were not approved until 2018. And so I'm just sharing that with you as far as processes, and it is a process. So even if we said to the board, we just want to pursue it, and it could be another 3 years before this actually comes to being. So not that I want to sway you either way, but even if we come back with data, it's still going to take a long while to do this.
Up here.
But Janelle, do we not, if we wanted to approve this one today, we could approve the concept of an add-on endorsement, but to know what the add-on endorsement is, what are the requirements for it, how many courses, what other requirements, et cetera, wouldn't we need to know that before we approve? Wouldn't that be the value that this group adds up the chain?
I guess my thinking, and again, maybe because I'm looking at it from a different lens that.
Get her a microphone.
And I know that it's been happening, quite, with folks trying to get this particular, and these conversation has been happening for a long while about this particular, it's been years that they've been talking about this. And so, and we keep talking about it. And in my mind, I just wanted to, so that we can actually get permission to move forward to investigate to see whether or not it's even an option. And again, I'm just one person and I'm just thinking about them on the other side, the process and how long it takes for us to get to that point.
But I
And
mean, I think this body is, I think the motion would tell you to move forward with the concept, but that I think you want Abtel to specify what in September, what the add-on endorsement would be, what would be the requirements for the add-on endorsement, so that when it goes up to the board, you already have that worked out. Maybe not. Maybe you think you could work that out at the board level, but to me,
no. Okay. I
Yeah.
mean, and again, no,
I mean, I think this group-
I mean, no, not at
Abtel
all.
has more expertise.
So I guess that's why I'm trying to understand. That's why I asked for it
Yeah.
to be read back
I don't
to
think
me.
the motion is that we want to come back and just talk more in
Yeah,
September.
that's fine. 'Cause
I think
that's
we,
what I heard.
I think
Yeah.
we want to have something, an add-on, a proposed add-on endorsement to vote on.
I
in
thought we were
September.
coming back and you're gonna look
No.
at this and we're gonna
Yeah.
talk about it.
Something to vote on.
Because I got it. That's why I did not understand that recommendation, because what I heard is we're gonna come back again and talk about it. And then
But when you come back in September,
we
you
will
will
actually have the
specific
add-on
information
endorsement.
that we
Okay,
can
all right,
literally
all
look
right.
at with
That
all
makes
the
sense.
numbers.
Okay, thank you.
And I think what the change was is that we were thinking about the licensure part of Abtel, putting together what it would look like in September. And that's when Eric would point out that the VDOE has the horsepower and the data to put together the details for this for September. So we could hit the ground running in September with a true detailed plan of what we wanted to recommend to the board.
So can you do one more thing for us? Because we're taking the minutes. Can you repeat that recommendation, not the amendment to the just the recommendation in its entirety?
I just want to make one clarification. This is what I'm thinking. My interpretation is we are past need assessment, right? Because there was a comment about going back and getting more statistics. I think Jen presented the need. So there's really we don't need to go back and collect more data. What we need to do is to have somebody develop the courses needed for this add-on endorsement and what the teachers would need. Correct? Right. No need assessment.
Without five people talking at the same time. Without five people talking at the same time. I'm going to clearly say this from Ann Holton. One more again from the beginning, so all ears can hear consistently, because there were questions that were posed in between. And as a body, we need to make sure we're clearly hearing each other, not talking over each other, so that we can clearly get to the end goal that we are looking for. Because there is somebody in this room has expressed the need to have more clarity and not to rush through this and to have it expanded. The amendment that was presented says, and I quote, that the Abtel subcommittee will now offer for the VDOE staff to do the work to ensure in September we have a presentation to vote upon. However, there were things that were asked in the process, and that was to bring statistics and information and what other states are doing to ensure we have a full scope of information before we actually vote. Is there anything else, Member Holton, that I am missing? Okay.
I'd like to add just a piece to this.
Yes.
The intent would be from my department, is that what we bring to you in September could quickly go to the board and have a NORA. That would be the intent. We don't have what you would need for that notice of a regulatory action. So we would be notifying the Commonwealth that we would regulatory action, that we're opening our reg to make a change. And we don't have that for option one. It's too complex for us to do that right now in a discussion. But maybe option two is not too complex. But that would be for you all to decide. But what we would bring to you in September could be packaged ready for you to go, we agree with this. We like the research that you showed us, and we are ready for you to take this to the board and then take the next regulatory steps.
Okay. Any other further discussion? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and call question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. So that takes us to solution 2, which was more directed. And solution 2 is about eliminating the word graduate, and that was the discussion. So what would be the recommendation or direction from this body?
In simplest terms, do it.
Okay, Shelby's got her hand up.
Previous slide, proposal for the minor revision to align the licensure regs for special education, early childhood endorsement, and licensure flexibility to remove the word graduate from the regulations.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Doug? You're welcome. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. And it's currently 10:37, and some of us look like we need a break. So we will reconvene at 10:45. So again, we'll reconvene at 10:45.
Everyone.
We'll go ahead and reconvene again. We're coming back into the meeting. As you're headed to your seats, we are continuing to have technical difficulties. If you're sitting on the right-hand side of the room and can't see the presentation and wish to move to the left-hand side of the room, please note there have been some room changes. So again, if you're sitting on the right-hand side of the room and you can't see the screen because we're not able to get this projector working on this side of the room, please feel free. Room has been made available on the opposite side of the room so that you can actually see the presentations on the screen. With that being said, I will turn things over to Shauna LeBron. It looks like we're not moving.
We tried to problem solve.
Right. So if you feel inclined while the presentation is going on, feel free, but I will turn things over to LaShawna Blonde for her presentation. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. How are you? Good. So before I jump in, we have a special guest here today. As you know, our apprenticeship program and our Grow Your Own efforts is in partnership with the Department of Workforce Development and Advancement. So today we are joined by Chief Deputy Commissioner Angela Kelly-Wysack, and we are going to have a little presentation on some of their initiatives that they're doing on their Virginia Has Jobs site before I jump into our Grow Your Own efforts. So Angela, come on over.
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to come and be with you this morning and share with you just a little bit about the Virginia Has Jobs initiative. Hopefully some of you have heard about this. Just first, I would like to just say that Virginia Works, which is, the name that we are using for the Department of Workforce Development and Advancement. It's just a little more accessible. It was created in 2023, as some of you may know, by legislation that was signed by the governor, and then we became fiscally self-sufficient, I guess, on July 1st, 2024. I like to think of that as the day that we truly began to control our own destiny. We're about 90% funded by either federal grants or federal programs, but we are seeking to bring together the key aspects of workforce development in the Commonwealth. There are 70-some programs scattered throughout all the secretariats and agencies that look to get at the issue of workforce, but we have combined workforce services from the Virginia Employment Commission, the Economic Information and Analytics Department, also from the VEC, registered apprenticeship from the Department of Labor and Industry, and Title I funding from the community college system. Some of you may know that as WIOA Title I, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act Title I funding. And pulling that all together to align our services to our dual customer, both the job seeker and the business. So, obviously both ends of that pipeline have to be solid and working in conjunction with one another in order for our economy to thrive. I'd be more than happy to provide more information to you on our efforts at Virginia Works, either at a later date or if you'd just like to give us a call. But today what I wanted to share with you was an exciting initiative that we recently introduced. It was called Virginia Has Jobs. And just a couple of quick, okay. That's all right. There we go. Okay. Just a couple of quick notes about the development. We actually started developing Virginia Has Jobs at the end of the year, somewhere in and around December of 2024. We're using data from the Virginia Office of Economics Education, or what many of us call VOE, to determine what the top jobs were posted in defined regions. So it's an algorithm that looks at a set time period and the number of unique job postings in that particular region. It was an intentional effort once the site started to be developed to highlight both public and private sector jobs, particularly because in the public sector, education and public safety ranked so highly in terms of their needs. We did go through and try to look at, okay,
how could we create regions that, you know, made some sense? If you've been in state government any time at all, you know that everybody's got their own set of regions. So we at Virginia Works are trying to go through and align our regions with the local workforce development board regions. Some of you may know that are familiar with those, hopefully. If not, again, happy to answer any questions. But those line up pretty closely with Go Virginia regions. So we decided to go with Go Virginia regions. We did combine 2 of those regions so that we don't quite have the 9 that we have in Go Virginia. We have 7 regions on the Go Virginia site. Just wanted to cover a few things that I will show you here today in terms of resources. We thought it was important that we use, you know, broadly familiar private sector search functions. So you will see that we have worked with LinkedIn and Indeed to provide the filters for the jobs in the regions and the sectors that we are highlighting, again, using that algorithm. We do provide connections to those 14 local workforce boards. Again, the Title I funding that comes from the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act flows through Virginia Works into those local areas so that they can take that money and be responsive to the needs of employers and job seekers in those communities and in those regions. And so as we are helping people look at training opportunities, job opportunities, all of the opportunities in their region, we want them, of course, to be aware of certain opportunities through those local workforce boards. So whether that's supportive services or, again, training, education, et cetera. We've also included, and we're really very excited about this, an apprenticeship finder. One of the big efforts that we are undergoing at the moment is ensuring that as people come in to a workforce center, that we have the ability to make sure that as we identify somebody who could be a good candidate for an apprenticeship, that we're able to connect them with a sponsor, with a hiring company who has a registered apprenticeship program and is in need of help and talent. So I will move to our next slide. So this is the splash page for Virginia Has Jobs. And if we've done our work well, I will click on this, and that's great. We will go to the Virginia Has Jobs website. Now, I just want to go ahead and adjust this a little bit so I can take you on a quick tour through our website. All right. So as you can see, we have a page here that goes through several different graphics. We do have at the moment over 259,000 jobs open in the Commonwealth today. That is 2 jobs for every unemployed person. And while we understand that there is not always alignment between the skill sets of the unemployed and their desire for work and the jobs that are available, we are working to better help align those because we think there's a lot of opportunity that can be gained there. So if you scroll down, you will see the map that I talked about. And here is an example of 2 of the regions that we combined. We combined the Richmond, Fredericksburg, and Chesapeake Bay areas into one region, and the Valley and Piedmont into one region. The rest of these align with Go Virginia regions. So let's just, for example, take a look at our local region here. You can click here, and it will take you through to these job opportunities. Right away, you can identify private or public jobs. If we go on to public jobs and you roll down, you can see these are some of the major employers in the Richmond region. As you will see, Henrico County Public Schools, Richmond Public Schools, Spotsylvania, et cetera. The Commonwealth of Virginia, we are a major employer. Again, you can look at the opportunities that you would find on LinkedIn or Indeed. Here is our apprenticeship opportunity link and our training opportunities link. So if you back out, I'll just go back over to the private sector so that you can get a feel for that as well. Herein again, you see employment services, general medical, surgical, hospitals, company and enterprises. All of those are major industries where jobs are available today. Now, we do update this information as we go through. About every couple of months, we're going to go through, run the algorithm again, come back out We are working with major employers in the region to help them promote their jobs. But I want to be clear that this is not an extra job posting website. I have got a couple of people who emailed me and said, "Hey, where do I go to enter all my jobs on your site?" And it's not exactly what we're doing here. We do have a product called the Virginia Workforce Connection that is the system of record for Virginia Works. But for those of you who've been involved with government, you know that many times our systems are going to be designed to provide, for example, Pearl or WIPS reporting, some sort of government reporting process that may or may not lead it to that user-friendly interface that you might find on a private sector job search website, again, such as the Indeeds or the LinkedIns of the world. So again, wanted to highlight, these are the workforce development boards that are associated with this particular region: the Capital Region Workforce, Bay Consortium, and Crater Region Workforce Board. And those are all working in conjunction, again, with their local boards that are composed of local businesses in the area, stakeholders, and a consortium of local elected officials, so that, again, everybody is working in concert to align the goals and the services that are provided. And here again, some of those major private sector employers that we have, as you can see: Patient First, Bon Secours, et cetera, et cetera. I just think it's important that that I also highlight, I know many of us understand what's going on at the moment with the federal workforce. We were fortunate to have the Virginia Has Jobs initiative being rolled out just as the announcement started to come about the federal layoffs. And so we were able to put together a resource page for affected federal workers, and it is being shared across our website, this website, the governor's website, and the Virginia Employment Commission's website. They are it's all the same information that helps guide people through filing for unemployment, helps them highlight the fact that we have great jobs here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, working for the Commonwealth of Virginia, and also helping them understand how they can use the tools that we have to assist them in their job search, whether that's upskilling, resume, career search assistance, what have you. So if I might just go back very quickly to the presentation. Nope, wrong one. All right. And we're off. Here we are.
You good?
Okay. Nope. Oh, here we go. I always joke that I should walk around with a technology apprentice, right? Somebody ought to come with all of us at each. I think it's this one. There we go.
There you go.
All right, I'll just move through very quickly. So to date, and actually this is probably even a little out of date because these were last week's numbers. I pulled these together very quickly. We had 130,000 visits to date to the Virginia Has Job, and those are unique interactive visits. We have been promoting this through several high-profile in-person events that the governor has done, again, highlighting top industries, and he's done one in Hampton Roads, and he's done one in Northern Virginia and one in the Fredericksburg area. We've had almost 500 people to date engage with us with a form that we have on the front page that says, would you like more information on upskilling, retraining, in-person career assistance, in-person job events, virtual hiring events, et cetera. So we are collecting that information and then trying to feed those folks with the information that could be helpful to them in their job search. We've had, again, any number of businesses asked to be a part of this effort, asked to have their high volume job listing pages highlighted on our site. We do have a daily dashboard that we are monitoring to look at what we are seeing in terms of activity and engagement. We had an initial statewide virtual hiring event followed up by a secondary regional hiring event in Hampton Roads, and our third virtual hiring event is going to take place tomorrow, focusing again on the jobs in the Fredericksburg to Petersburg range, all along that I-95 corridor. At last count, we'd had 8,700 plus job seekers register for those hiring fairs, more than 400 businesses, and over 14,000 applications and resumes have been shared in this virtual hiring fair environment. It's actually a really interesting platform. It's called Virtual Premier. It's developed. It's a small veteran-owned business, and they provide this platform where you can go in, and it's just like a regular job fair. You get into all of the employers or the resource companies have booths, and you go to each booth. You can share your resume, you can apply for a job, you can sign up for a virtual one-on-one interview. It's very interactive, and so we are encouraged by this. We're going to be hosting an apprenticeship centric virtual hiring event on National Apprenticeship Day, which is coming up on April 30th. So we are very excited about that. And then just to speak a little bit about how we are using this as an expander, if you will, for all of our partners, as different of the local workforce boards are addressing the specific needs, some particular to the federal workforce, but others just specific to the needs of their region. We can use this particular platform to promote hiring fairs, virtual or in person in their region. We've been sending out press releases. For example, there was the Arlington Economic Development Partnership. I was putting together a leadership forum. We sent that out. And we are trying to promote opportunities through the Virginia Community College System. For example, some of you may have heard about Nova Next, which is offering up to $1 million in scholarships for upskilling in certain key high demand occupations and credential programs. So I think the last thing I would just like to promote is that over the last 2 weeks, just over the last 2 weeks, we've launched our new revised website, virginiaworks.gov. And I highly recommend that you take a look at that, but more importantly, that you revisit, because as you all know, website and website dynamics are ever changing. And so as we have launched Virginia Has Jobs, as we are putting forward our new website, we are continuing to seek to pull those together with our labor market information site to create one easy, simple place to go for all of the information that you might need in terms of workforce development. And that includes creating a new, more user-friendly, more intuitive interface for the Virginia Workforce Connection, which again is our system of record. But we recognize that it is a product that needs some updating to make it more user-friendly and to make it more of an obvious go-to place, again, for our dual customers, our job seekers, and our employers. And so with that, I know you've got a full agenda today. I am happy to take a couple of questions if you like. And if not, I will just take this opportunity to say thank you. I know we have the secretary, the delegate, and many members of school boards and teachers in this room. And I just want to say thank you to you. I don't think folks in education hear that often enough. On the way in this morning, I was listening to a piece that was talking about the pandemic and everything that our schools and our communities went through at the time, and just thinking about all the teachers that had to turn on a dime, all the school boards who had to really rethink everything they do every day. And it was a heavy lift. And anytime I get an opportunity to say thank you as a parent and a community member, I want to make sure I do that. So go back and tell your peeps, tell your folks, tell your colleagues that we at Virginia Works are very, very grateful for the hard work that you do every day. Thank you. Questions? Oh, yes, ma'am. Oh, sorry.
Just with all the recent federal job cuts, I don't know if you're doing anything special to track them here. And I had shared too, I don't know if you saw, but Maryland is encouraging federal employees that lost their jobs to go into teaching. So,
yeah. Yes. So thank you for that. Yes. Again, I'm afraid to touch anything on our, let me see if I can go back. we can go through and look at that. Again, we are using the banner here to try to encourage our federal workers to consider alternative careers. Now, there's a lot to that. Obviously, we're talking about licensure, here or there. So, we are cognizant of that. But it was one of the reasons, again, that we were very intentional about highlighting the needs in local government, both in education and in public safety, to help our federal workers understand all of those opportunities. And then again, many of our local governments and our school systems have been participating in these virtual hiring fairs. About somewhere between 18 and 30% of the attendees in these virtual hiring fairs are self-identifying as federal workers. That could be low, or it could be accurate. We are relying on them to self-identify. But we certainly do hope that people will consider working for. I came out of local government as well, so I have a special place in my heart for, again, our local governments and our school system. So thank you for that. Yes, ma'am.
Was funding for any of this from federal grants that could possibly go away?
I'm sorry, funding for Virginia Has Jobs?
Or the Virginia Works website or any of those other initiatives?
The Virginia Works. The Virginia Works website was funding from the General Assembly for part of our startup. There are questions about what will happen with the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funding, which needs to be reauthorized. The Economic Information and Analytics department that I referenced is primarily funded by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So as we come up on these opportunities for federal budget, what do you call it, continuing resolutions and so forth, we are always looking at what will happen. And we have about 2 weeks worth of funding, I think, to keep their work moving, but they are not allowed to work in the case of a federal shutdown. So I think it's more program specific. At this point, the registered apprenticeship grant that we have, we are applying for the third year of the state apprenticeship expansion formula grant. So I think it's really mostly case by case, but the Virginia Has Jobs was done with very little money. And our website, again, was part of our startup. But thank you for that question. Did I see another hand? Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you very much for allowing me to be with you today. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me through our website. I'm always just happy to answer questions, or if you think that it would be helpful for us to come and speak with any of your organizations about, again, the alignment of what Virginia Works is trying to do in serving our job seekers and our businesses, please let me know. We're happy to come out and be with you. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Just when you thought I yielded my time. Just kidding. I'm still here. So the agenda item is specific to principal apprenticeship. However, we have launched several initiatives under the Grow Your Own umbrella that I thought Abtel would appreciate an update on what we're doing, because we have been rapid fire in the last month. So we're really excited about all of our rollouts. So I'm going to go kind of quickly through the first half because you've seen it before, and it was just more of a reminder so that I can show you how it all comes together at the end. So when we talk about Grow Your Own, initially we kind of talked about it being Grow Your Own specific to teacher apprenticeship. So the conception kind of married those two ideas together. However, when we, what's going on? Okay, what are you doing? Oh, you want me to move it? Maybe. If it gets in the way of anything else, just let me know. So when we talk about it, I like to think about Grow Your Own as an umbrella terminology and the different initiatives as the spokes of the umbrella. So when we are talking about Grow Your Own, we're talking about not only apprenticeship programs, but we're looking at residency programs, para to teacher programs that some school divisions have had long-standing programs for. We're talking about these alternate licensing programs as well. For example, the Hanover County, where they actually act as the sponsor for their teachers to get from a provisional to a full licensure through their professional studies program. However, we are starting to expand some of this work into high school and our middle school. So we're looking at our Teachers for Tomorrow, our Educators Rising programs, and we're doing this kind of through a pre-apprenticeship lens. So we're just kind of building our bridge a little bit backwards with these opportunities, but we're hoping to grow this pipeline to make it a high quality and accessible pipeline and a pathway for our teachers and our educators. So just a quick reminder about our registered teacher apprenticeship and the components for that. So just a really quick reminder that we are doing, our program is designed to take individuals who have an associate's degree or 60 credit hours to a bachelor's degree. And they do that when they are in a full-time position, non-teacher of record, and they have a mentor teacher and they're earning while they're learning. So we're taking, and by the end of it, they come out with their full licensure and they are teacher of record. So the one thing you'll hear me keep saying is June 30th, 2027. Now that is only because that is the end of our grant funding. So our apprenticeship programs will absolutely outlive that date, but the grant funding ends June 30th, 2027. And that's kind of what we're using to start this funding, start these programs. So just our quick funnel, again, I had to retire the funnel and I'm really sad about it because I loved it so much and I wanted to use it for every single thing I possibly could, but I had to stop. I had to find a new graphic. So if you look, we're targeting individuals who are already in our school community, are looking at our paraprofessionals, career changers, such as maybe people who are tutors, looking at our parent volunteers who are always in the school. We know they'd be amazing teachers and how we can help them through this pipeline. So right now, as of beginning of March, we have 50 school divisions who have said, hey, I want to run this program within our school division. And that's about 38% of the Commonwealth, which is really, really great. And we are still expanding. So I just had to have a date of a cutoff for this so that I could get the presentation done. But we are continuously to expand and continuing conversations with school divisions all the time so that they could launch those. So we did run a grant program and we did have a lot of interest in our teacher apprenticeship solicitation. We had $2.55 million to award and we had over $11.8 million in requests, which was a blessing and a curse at the exact same time, right? So it showed us that there was a huge desire for these programs and that there was a lot of interest for them. So that showed us that this was something we were on the right goal, right? However, it's very hard when you have to say, I have to cut $8.5 million from individuals because I only have $2.55 million to award. And in my previous life, I was grants manager for the department, and I had never seen that discrepancy in grant funding before. I was very shocked. So we were very, very blessed with that. And we did have 9 awardees and they're up on the screen. Now, one thing that we were able to do as the state sponsor, we were able to talk to our EPPs, which is Educator Preparation Programs. I don't know if I said that before. We were able to talk to them and say, hey, your proposal was really, really great and we really liked it. However, you're asking for $30,000 per apprentice, which is really high compared to other individuals. Could we work with you and see if we can get that down? So we set the maximum cost per apprentice at $20,000. So this is a 2-year program, so it's $10,000 to each year to take them from their associates to their bachelor's degree. So we were really, really happy that our EPPs were willing to work with us on some of those cost initiatives so that we could serve more seats for our individuals. So right now, We are planning to serve 164 teacher apprentices throughout the Commonwealth, and we do have all 8 superintendents regions represented. So we're very, very excited about that. So moving on to our principal apprenticeship, we did launch this in January. And this looks very similar to teacher because obviously they're very similar occupations, but we did work with Virginia Works to get this as a registered occupation in December so that we could launch this program in January. And this program is taking individuals who are in our school community already, so our teacher, our department chairs, who want to become certified with the administration and supervision endorsement. And there are multiple ways they can get to that. So we looked at individuals who already have the master's program and they're just needing to add on that certificate to meet the endorsement requirements. However, we also are considering individuals who only have their bachelor's degree and they need to add on that master's in order to get the endorsement as well. So we're very excited about this. We did launch a grants program for this as well, and we're still waiting on that negotiation. So we're doing something very similar with our EPP. So I don't have a list for you today. However, we are very excited that we do have the majority of the Commonwealth participating. And it looks like we are going to exceed our goals. So when we wrote in the grant opportunity for the state apprenticeship expansion funding, we wrote in that we would only service 17 principal apprentices. It's looking like we're going to be able to double that with our funding and the cost maximization. So we're very, very excited about that. So hopefully I will be able to bring that to you next time, or we'll have that published somewhere. But just using, this is the last time I use the funnel, I promise. Using our funnel, we're looking at our school counselors, our certified teachers, and it's similar. So they're serving in a non-administrator of record role, and they're being mentored by a principal administrator who is exemplar within their field, and they are working towards their endorsement requirements. So 2 things that we launched, just to give you a little procedural of what we were doing, we do partner with the National Center for Grow Your Own. So a lot of this work I'm really happy that we are able to do in partnership because there's only one of me. And sometimes it's really hard to hold a focus group, take notes, listen, respond. So I was really happy to have some support there because we actually did focus groups with our school divisions in January. And that focus group served as a way for us to get a landscape analysis for the next 2 initiatives. So we just took a sample of our school divisions and we made sure we were sampling the whole state, and we made sure we were looking at city, rural, suburban, so that we had a good sample size. Because as much as I would love to sample and do a survey for the entire Commonwealth, I just did not have the time to have conversations with 131 school divisions, but we did have conversations with over 30 of them. So through this, we said, what are you currently doing in high school? And what are you currently doing in middle school for your potential educators? So we heard lots and lots about Teachers for Tomorrow and Educators Rising, which is they're amazing programs. However, depending on where you were in the Commonwealth, that program looked very different. So there were instances where they were dual enrolled, and there were instances where they were just leading to the CTE initiative, both wonderful goals. So we said one of our opportunities that we can look at is the definition of a high quality pre-apprenticeship program. So we looked at, and there are 5 key things that came out of this. So sustainable partnerships, approved curriculum and facilitated entry, simulated experience and clinical experiences, support services, and increased access. So these are our 5 buckets that we're looking at, and for our school divisions of, are you working with partners that will continue working with you, outlasting the grant opportunity? Are you using this approved curriculum, and one of the key parts of a pre-apprenticeship is the facilitated entry. So what we don't want to happen is we don't want Shauna to graduate from a pre-apprenticeship program and take all the coursework at the school division level and then go into a teacher apprenticeship program and our EPP in my school division says, nope, sorry, you don't have it. You don't have everything that you need to have this. So we're looking at how can we connect these two dots and build that bridge. Also, a key part of this is the work-based learning experience. So we want to make sure that our pre-apprentices are looking and getting experience, and not only in early childhood, which is what a lot of the programs were doing. They were saying, hey, go hang out at the daycare, which I worked at a daycare for 3.5 years. I can't think of a happier place, but some people do not like littles, and that's okay. So how can we work with our middle school and our high school as well without there being a conflict of interest? Because we know not everybody wants to be an elementary school teacher, and that's okay. But if we only have our experiences in the elementary school level, we're leaving out a lot of people because they say, oh, no, thank you. I like my immune system. Thank you so much. But we're going to look at how can we engage them as well. So through this, we also have our support services. So same thing with our teacher apprentices. We have really strong wraparound services. And one of those being that all of our individuals going through a pre-apprenticeship program will have to take and pass the Parapro Praxis. And that is because, and this is going to segue just a little bit to our next one. So I'll kind of jump in between. We heard that we were taking all of the great paras who were currently in the schools and we were putting them in our teacher apprenticeship program, which is great. That was the intention of the program. However, what did we do? We created a vacuum of amazing paraprofessionals. And we heard that training for paraprofessionals really depends on where you are in the Commonwealth as well. So for some school divisions, they say, hey, you want a job? You want to be a para? Great. Bye. Have fun. And the mentor teacher and the teacher in the room is really responsible for training that paraprofessional. So we said, all right, how can we adjust some of this and how can we help fill this pipeline as well? So individuals who come through this pre-apprenticeship program, not only will they have a facilitated entry into their teacher apprenticeship program, if they opt out and they decide they don't want to become a teacher apprenticeship, they can become a paraprofessional and keep them in the education field until they're ready to become a teacher, or if they want to stay as a paraprofessional. So increased access is also just looking at, are we making sure we have access to our education field? So one of the things we heard from our school divisions was that we call this a to and through method, and our school divisions are great at the to. So we all have really great relationships with all of our high schoolers and our teachers for tomorrow. However, when they go off and they leave our nest, we're not quite sure what happens to them. Sometimes they come back if they have that favorite teacher and they'll come back. But however, the school division did not have any systems in place to keep that relationship of saying, hey, I know you're on winter break. Do you want to come substitute? Do you want to come job shadow? Do you want to come and help me grade things and get that realistic experience? Do you want to come tutor and maybe earn some extra money? What college student doesn't need a little extra money? So looking at how can we make sure that we're taking that touch point just from after graduation through early college as well. So this kind of leads into the paraprofessional opportunity. Because we heard that there was such a need for our paraprofessional training and that there was a huge need for that, we decided we would develop a paraprofessional apprenticeship opportunity as well. And this opportunity would actually develop some of these career ladders for our paraprofessionals, because I worked at a school division, and what typically happened with our paraprofessionals is that they would come join us and each year they would get an extra step because they were there that extra year. And if they were rock star paraprofessionals, then we would say, oh, this teacher is struggling. Maybe we can put them with this person. Oops, sorry. And that's not really what we want to happen, right? So we want to make sure we're growing these individuals as well and that we are supporting them through these designations in our pipeline. So we actually launched a grant opportunity in March, which invites our school divisions to join us on this journey. So we did not develop the standards for this yet because it's going to look very different across the Commonwealth. And so we wanted our school divisions to co-design this with us. So we're looking at what's called a master paraprofessional credential. That's just a working term. We're not set on it. But one of the key components of an apprenticeship program is that the apprentice has to journey towards a credential. So we do not currently have a paraprofessional credential in the state of Virginia, and we do not really have one nationwide either. So we're really excited that we are going to be leading the charge on some of this work and designing these credentials for these paraprofessionals to earn and look at how to develop these career ladders. So we put out for the school divisions and we said, hey, we want you to co-design this with us because we don't want to make this a unilateral VDOE says. So we just kind of asked them to agree to a certain aspects of activities. So they have to have the capacity. They have to make sure they have some type of a mentor ability already in place. But some of this is going to be worked out as well. So we don't really know what mentoring is going to look like until we set the standards for the paraprofessionals. So we're very, very flexible with this, and we're just inviting our school divisions to co-design this with us. And I keep going back to Rob and I attended a conference in the beginning of the year. And one of the presenters, it really stuck with me about what partnership looks like. And so I really took what she said and really am trying to model that. We didn't want to come to the table with set ideas already because that's not what a partnership is. That's not what co-design is. So we have a couple of ideas, right? Like in our back pocket of what we think this could look like, but we're also really open as well. And we want to truly make this a partnership effort with our school divisions. So if you're looking at this and you're looking at how all of these different programs come together, Rob and I always talked about it as it being a highway. And we're looking at our emerging educator apprenticeship pathways. So I'm really sorry you all had the opportunity to move over to see my beautiful highway. Just saying. But if you're looking at it, we're starting individuals at the yellow stop. So on this highway, that's our pre-apprenticeship opportunities. And we're looking at our high school students and possibly even our middle school students and how we can engage them. Now, individuals can continue on the highway, or if they decide that they want to become a paraprofessional and work towards that associate's degree and that master paraprofessional credential, they can exit the highway to go through the paraprofessional apprenticeship opportunity, which is the red that you'll see. And you'll see that there's a parallel highway there because being a paraprofessional is a honorable career occupation. There's nothing wrong with being a paraprofessional. They are the hardest working individuals. So they can continue on after they receive that master paraprofessional credential and actually mentor individuals who are becoming paraprofessionals as is. Or there's an entry and on-ramp as well to get you back to that educator highway. And that's through the teacher registered apprenticeship program. So individuals can go on that purple line and go back into the educator highway. And then eventually they can possibly, if they want to become leaders and school leaders in a more systematic way of not just department chair or leading the mentor teacher and student teaching, they can go through the principal apprenticeship program and work towards becoming a principal of record through the green exit ramp. So this is kind of the all comes together highway graphic of what we're doing here with all of our different initiatives. So that's all I had for you. Do you have any questions for me? Yes, Dr. Arnold.
Thank you for the presentation, Shauna.
My pleasure.
Question I have is Teachers for Tomorrow and Educators Rising in Virginia. Is there a preponderance of one over the other?
Yes. And that was part of what we saw through the focus groups was that there was a clear divide. It didn't really make sense. There was no real pattern to it. It seemed to be who could afford Educators Rising and who got the Teacher for Tomorrow training. So we're working with our CTE office to see how we could merge both of them to make a pre-apprenticeship curriculum and do some training around that as well. Yeah, great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think Mary has a question. Sorry.
I feel like I have a lot of questions today, and I wish the rest of you had more questions because then I wouldn't feel so bad about having so many questions. The master paraprofessional thing that we're talking about starting, is that coming with compensation? Because I'm assuming that you're creating that so that you'd have seasoned, experienced, high quality parapros training these apprentice parapros, but they should be compensated fairly for that. So is that going to be a requirement of that endorsement or is it going to be left up to each individual school division as to whether they choose to compensate them for that?
So this is a complicated answer, and I promise I'm not intentionally making it complicated. Through this grant program, we're not allowed to have salary and wages as part of any part of our grant funding. So even my salary is all in kind. So we can't have anything as salary or wage in this. However, we can encourage stipends for journey workers, which is what the mentors are. So we are allowing that as a capacity building and incentive funding for the paraprofessional mentors. However, moving forward, the school division would have to be the deciding factor, just like they are with teachers who are mentoring as well.
Thanks. Great presentation. Hello. Okay. Is any of the funding that the grants the department is awarding or other funding that's helping support these programs, other expenses, related expenses, dependent on federal grants? And do you have any insights about the potential impact of the federal cuts? I know there have been cuts that we've seen come and go and legal challenges, et cetera, around a number of teacher preparation grants at the federal level. So what's the impact? What should we worry about?
Yeah, so this is actually funded through the, and Angela mentioned it, the State Apprenticeship Expansion Funding Grant that is funded by the U.S. Department of Labor. So it's a workforce development funding. It's not coming from USED. So far, so good. And one thing that we have seen the signal from is that the current administration is very supportive of apprenticeships. So we're pretty optimistic that because of what we're doing and the impact that we're having, that we will be okay. But we do have some contingencies built in, and we always encourage, I told Rob I was going to get a tattoo that said braided funding, because I'm all about braided funding all the time and how can we make sure that it's sustainable. I'm never one that says put all the eggs in a grant bucket. Sure.
Follow up to that, just that's wonderful to hear. But your braided funding is helping me express my follow-up question, which is, are some of the programs that the divisions are using your apprenticeship funding for braiding in other funding that it is at risk?
Not that I'm aware of at this point. Yeah. And then Dr. Jones has a question.
Member Holton, you're not crazy. There's something with this mic.
Yeah.
Even with it being on, it's kind of not on. Can y'all hear me back there? Okay, so the question I have pertains to the certification. You were talking about us leading forward. Can you give us a little bit more information about what that looks like and when this body might be able to see some of those products, if you would?
Yeah. Is that in reference to the paraprofessional?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I'm super excited about that one.
Yeah, so I don't have a solid answer for you yet, because that is actually something that is not licensure. So there's no licensure requirement for our paraprofessionals currently in BDOE regs. So we'll be working with Virginia Works and the Workforce Development and Advancement Board to identify and get that credential. So we're hoping to use the summer as a co-design model, and maybe get some ideas and figure out that, because we really do want that to be in effect for the 25-26 school year. Yeah.
Follow up to that, because I know that you do a great job of presentations. Love the graphic.
Thank you.
I think that the spinning is gone.
I'm sorry.
But it would be great if you could bring that information back, because I think this body is super excited to see how that turns out.
Yeah, absolutely. Always happy to be invited back. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Shauna, I'm going to raise this up a little bit. So we're towards the end of our day today, what I have to share and what Mr. McKinley's got to share, you've already heard some of. We do have some decisions that we need to make. But before I roll too much into that, I wanted to pause for a second. Can I have those 2 sheets of paper? And I want to acknowledge a few people. First off, I apologize that I don't have the certificates ready. We had a change in leadership, which means changes in signatures, which means delays on getting some things finalized. And there will be formal certificates for all the people I have here coming soon. They're just not ready today, but because this is our last meeting, I can't delay. I can't wait for a piece of paper to tell a few people thank you. First, I want to tell Miss McIntyre, Mary, thank you personally. And thank you for being part of this board. You will be cycling off this board. I'm going to read what it says on the certificate. It's nothing too amazing, but Virginia Board of Education Certificate of Appreciation presented to Miss Mary G. McIntyre for distinguished services as the classroom teacher, middle member, Advisory Board on Teacher Education and Licensure since July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2025. Presented, even though I'm not presenting it to you, on the 7th day of April in the year 2025. And I just want to say thank you. And if you had anything you wanted to say to the board, I will pause for you to do that. If not, we just want to definitely thank you for your presence. Okay. Thank you so much for your service. Also, I have another one for Mr. Stephen Whitten. Thank you so much, sir, for your time and the conversations that we've had over the last year and a half or so. And as your certificate says as well, it says Virginia Board of Education Certificate of Appreciation presented to Mr. Stephen G. Whitten for distinguished service as the classroom teacher middle members. Those are the ones we struggle to keep. Advisory Board on Teacher Education and Licensure since July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2025, presented on the 7th day of April in the year 2025. And we will have nice ones with signatures eventually. Did you have anything you'd like to say to the board? He's right behind you. He's got a mic for you.
Thank you very much for that recognition. This is my 7th year on the board. I started on an unfulfilled term for 1 year, but I've certainly enjoyed this. This was a brand new experience for me. I've worked with the VEA since I was a student at Longwood back in '77, and this was brand new. I remember when this board was formed to give teachers a say in their licensure. And I know people that started it and what we looked up to them, and I never really thought I'd be here, but I have certainly enjoyed this. I'm also enjoying retirement. After 43 years and I met that golden age, I took retirement. So I'm losing a lot of things with VEA because of retirement and this, I'm terming off, but I have certainly enjoyed it. But I do hope that you will search out people to continue the good work that this board is doing. That was kind of how I got here. Bonnie Bowen from Halifax, she recommended me and I applied and was accepted. So I hope you will do the same when you rotate off, but look for those people to do the good work that we're doing. That's going to support public school educators and public school students. Don't ever forget those students, because everything we do is going to trickle down to those students. But again, I appreciate, I've met all of you and I've enjoyed working with you. And that will be my final word for today unless something else comes up. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Additionally, we have another person that always wants to point out that she's not a voting member, but she is definitely a cornerstone to this group. Ms. Holton, I wanted to say thank you so much for your time with this board and with the Board of Education in general. I hope it's not the last time that we see each other. I've definitely enjoyed conversations that we've had and the support that you've provided through this board and beyond this board. And so I was trying to think, what do I want? I want to get you something. And I was like, well, you've been working on growing us as a group and growing the state. So I got something else for you to work on growing in your retirement. And so thank you.
As you know, I never pass up the opportunity to speak. But I'll just say thank you, and what a rich opportunity it's been for me to represent the board on this board and to learn from and with you all. I don't know of any other group that so usefully brings together the ed prep programs in the higher ed institutions with the K-12 world and the DOE team thinking about these really important issues around quality teachers in every classroom, which we all know is the key to our students' success. So I've really enjoyed learning from and with you over these few years. I did speak with we have a brand new superintendent of public instruction, and brand new to the role, but not to Virginia. She's been serving, Emily Ann Gullickson has been serving as the deputy secretary in the of education in the governor's office and has now come over to the superintendent role. But I've spoken to her and to Grace Creasy, the president of the board, about the importance of getting you all a new appointee as the liaison to the board, and hope and trust that that will be done soon and you'll have somebody new from the board in the fall. And I know you will welcome them and help educate them the way you've helped educate me. Thank you for everything you do here and in the classroom where and in all your different roles supporting our kids in the classroom, which is why we're all here. Thank you.
So I have two other items. One, if it's going to work. I told you I'd bring back some of the numbers from our last meeting. There was questions on how much revenue we get for licensure, how many licenses we process, and how that has changed over the years. So I put together this little graphic just so you could have a visual to see the changes over the years. When you get to the last year, you'll see how drastically it came down. Not for lack of work on our side with our licensure specialists. They are working just as hard. It's just not at renewals. And so renewals are a big part of our revenue. As you can see, over the last couple of years, it's just continually gone down, and it will continually go down at least one more year before we have the next group of renewals for the 10-year license. So I promised I would bring this to you, so I'm sharing it with you. I will say I did spend some time with our new superintendent, and she has made promises, I guess. I don't know, promises probably aren't the right word. She has assured me that she is interested in working on solutions within the agency before we branch that out to people outside the actual agency. So before we would raise any fee, we want to make sure that we are doing everything we can within the department to, number one, maximize the use of the money that we do have, but also finding other revenue sources that we already have to possibly address some of this. And so I'm not bringing this to you as an item to vote on or make a decision on. I'm just bringing the data to you and letting you know that we are going to continue to work on this. And she is was one of the first things her and I talked about was this issue. And so we are already in the steps of trying to rectify this as much as we can. We know that at some point, everybody will be back on a 10-year cycle, and that some of this will work itself out through time. But in the meantime, it is a little bit of alarming to see such a big drop in revenue on a group that uses that revenue for so many different things. So unless there are any questions on this, I want to go to our last last item for me, and then we have one more item after me. No questions? Okay. So let me pull up what we talked about. Let's see, is it in a word? Probably closed it on accident. Abtel. All right. Here we go. That was for this year. I need to go. Okay. All right. So one of the things we will be voting on here in just a little bit, once we finish with Mr. McKinley's presentation, is our schedule for next year. last month when I presented, I said that I would have more information. Number one, on whether or not we go all virtual, we go partial virtual, anything like that. So I was able to confirm that we can do 2 days of virtual, no more, unless we have more meetings. So if it's a percentage, so if we added 5 meetings, we could have more than 2, but we're not going to add 5 meetings. So my intent would be that our first meeting in September would be the first virtual, and then we hold the second virtual meeting towards the end, because number one, we wouldn't want to go and then not be able to meet somewhere along the line, and then we run out of meetings. So I would want to hold that towards sometime in the spring, to be determined, hopefully at least a month out. But my recommendation would be the September meeting be virtual, and I have a reason for that, and I'm not just randomly picking that. We've been working on whether or not we are moving out of the James Monroe building for 2 years, really, to be honest. And if we do leave the James Monroe building, my number one location would have to change most likely. So I want to be prepared if that happens during the summer, so that we can adjust quickly. There are plenty of places to go, but it's not something you can do in 1 day or 2. You have to do a lot of planning to get that in order. So my recommendation would be that the September 8th, if that's the one of the dates that you choose, would be our first virtual, and we would hold the second virtual meeting to be determined as the year goes by. These are the same dates that I brought to you last, was it February or March? Did we meet in February?
It was March.
It was March. With the slight changes that we actually requested during the meeting. So does anyone have any questions about these dates, comments about these dates? If you count, there are more than 5 there. So this definitely allows us to, we actually have 7 with one of them make up if needed. We don't need 6, we only need 5. So we can actually pull out either the January or March one if we want to work around legislative season. As you can see, though, there is a little bit of a problem with pulling out maybe the March 23rd and not having a May 4th. That means that basically coming out of legislative season, you have 1 meeting. So it's not horrible, but it is something that to be thought about. Doesn't give you a lot of time to adjust and pivot coming out of legislative season. Any comments, thoughts, questions?
Given what you all were talking about today, would that be a good meeting to have folks not together? Just with the topic areas, and then if you've been gone all summer, there may be things that come up. I know we struggle sometimes having virtual meetings when the topics, everybody kind of needs to be in the same. So just a thought.
That's a good comment too. If you couldn't hear, she's saying coming into the first meeting being September 8th and being virtual, knowing that we have an actual regulatory process step that we would be taking, do we want that to be in person as opposed to being virtual? When these dates were determined, any of these dates could be a regulatory date, just so they could end up being, all of these dates could be regulatory dates. So that was not a major concern, but if that is a concern for the whole body, then I yield to your recommendation. Any other questions? We will have a chance to open this up for voting here in just a few minutes. No other questions? All right, that was easy. Okay, let's see. This. I had one more thing I needed to talk about. Location is actually not a problem. We don't know where we're going to be. So the location right now, if we stay where we're at, would be the James Monroe building. We will not be utilizing this space past today. And one of the other benefits on waiting till doing the 8th virtually is it gives more time for us to set up hotel partnerships to make it easier for those of you that travel. We will still have that as part of this. That doesn't go away. It just may not be this hotel, because we'll try to probably put you closer to the meeting space than here. But that was another reason why September 8th being virtual, we wouldn't need to worry about housing anybody for the 8th. Well, I think that's time for Mr. McKinley. All right. I'm going to leave that available. Mr. McKinley, would you please come forward? So last March, we had a presentation on libraries, theater, and agriculture as potential new licensure tests that we would have. And we also shared out with you some more data over the course between then and now for you to review, should you choose to review it. I also was able to confirm that, so one of the questions that we had was, if we made these changes, how would that impact people getting these licenses immediately? Is this something that we'd have to go through a full regulatory process before that would go into effect? And the answer is no, we would not, because it does not specifically forbid any of these areas for an alternate assessment pathway. The way licensure works is if it doesn't say you can't do it, then you can do it kind of situation. And we use that kind of logic quite often on a lot of add-on endorsements and alternate pathways. If there's an assessment available, it can substitute for curriculum as an option. These three do not have that current option. If this were to be approved through this board and then accepted by the Board of Education, that would allow somebody to add these endorsements by passing these tests. In addition to meeting the other requirements, this would just substitute for your curriculum. Am I wrong, Shelby? Okay. Will you give her a mic? Brian. It's just funny watching him react.
So for people that are currently in an approved program like library, media, ag ed, who don't currently have a praxis to take, if we pass the scoring and this praxis being an option, would they now have to take the praxis as part of the approved program?
So I think that would be actually part of what the board would actually be deciding when we bring that. You know how we phase in new tests?
Yes.
So that is something that when we take a presentation to the board, we usually say, people that are from here to here can do either or, right? And then from here to here or here beyond have to follow the new way.
Okay.
So that would be part of the presentation that we would take to the board and say, those who are in current programs as of this date
Have to add the assessment as part of the program to complete it.
not those that are already in the program.
Okay.
All those that are starting the program after that date
Would then
have to do that. Now, I would see that there could be people that maybe they already have a degree and they could find that this could actually make a different pathway for them easier too. There's a different way of looking at it. That way you've described as more of a challenge for those. But there's also a way to think there's people that maybe decide they wanted to be a librarian
and they could just take the test.
and they already had an English certification. That would make that a much easier pathway as opposed to the other way, makes it a little bit more challenging.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. It's
Now, the recommendation from this group can lead to a regulatory action, whereas we could say it's either or, but that would be a regulatory action. So if we don't take the regulatory action and we just add the assessment, then yes, it becomes just like everything else that has an assessment.
okay. Thank you.
Rob, so let me make sure I understand this correctly. Is that so if we adopt a praxis test for library media, that would mean somebody who has a current license and wants to add library media could just take the praxis test. And if they pass it, they would add that endorsement on through testing and never have to take any of the classes or the required internship.
So as I understand this, it would only replace the classes. It would not replace the internships. Am I wrong? Brian, you think I'm wrong on that? I don't believe I'm wrong, but think of another example of where we have that. What about you, Shelby? You think I'm wrong? Or do you think we have to be specific?
I'm assuming it'd be like any other ad by testing, that if you're already licensed, fully licensed in English, and now you take the library media praxis assessment and pass it,
Mhm.
you can now add that endorsement. Is that not how it works in other states, Malik? Or do they have additional requirements to take?
I think it depends on the state that we're talking about. But there are some states that where you can just add on with a test. There are states where you are required to complete maybe 9 hours worth of coursework and a test. So it just kind of depends on the state prerogative. But you're not alone in this kind of decision, but we've seen both sides of the coin there.
Yeah, just to jump into agree, I guess the way this is being proposed is to add these 3 assessments to meet content, to add the endorsements. So similarly to in Virginia, if you teach geometry at the secondary level and you go and take the biology assessment and pass it, then you can apply to have the biology endorsement added to your license and you would be eligible to teach biology. So that was the thought, without any additional internship. Now, everybody would have had to meet the 1 year of supervised experience or completed that through their, approved program. But this proposal wouldn't directly add any other requirements to the process of meeting content through the assessment.
I don't think this is a problem for the 2 of the 3. It's only a problem
For this one.
for this one. And here's why I ask. Think of another license type that requires an internship. Can you think of one?
Yeah.
Okay. So that one's so specific though. That one's tough because it's not like a curriculum. Reading's got so many things though.
Those are specialized endorsements.
Yeah. But I can't think of one that's just like a subject area taught that requires the internship. So that's why it's like, I don't see how it would substitute for that internship part. It would just substitute, like the other ones only substitute for the curriculum piece that you're missing by taking this. The biology, you take the test, you're a math teacher, you take the biology assessment, you've substituted for all the curriculum that you would have needed to add to go from a math teacher to a biology teacher. But that's all that is required.
For ag ed, and we have more than that.
Mhm.
So this would pose a huge risk to students and a huge underserving to the educator in the classroom. So respectfully, as Rob just said, I will go 1 3/4 because theater kind of has some of that same component, particularly from a construction standpoint. But specifically for agricultural education, this is not the way we want to approach things. And that's from me speaking as an individual, as a teacher, but also speaking from an agricultural education standpoint in the state of Virginia. This will take us backwards, not forward.
When you say that, you're talking about by allowing just the test to
Yes, because
qualify.
the content material,
Right,
even when I asked Malik last month to clearly clarify what is even covered is not even the correct proportion to the information that you have to know as a teacher. So it's not hitting it either way you go.
And I am on that same line of thinking with library media because it's so drastically different from just from the requirements of a classroom teacher, and then to be able to sit down and just take the test and pass it, and now you certify. But Rob, I guess to go back just a little bit, is that so? Do we need tests for these, or where is the idea coming that we need to have tests for these areas?
Well, first off, they're available. So we'll start with availability. They weren't always available, at least not to us. And they are available now to us. Whether or not we need a easier way to get through to be a librarian, I don't know if I would say an easier way, but I know we have a shortage of librarians. And I know that it is quite challenging to find somebody who's qualified to do theater. Ag, I would defer more to our president, as she is way more knowledgeable on that than I am. I will say that it is an option, and I will say that we do already have quite a few legislative changes that make being a CTE teacher easier or a different pathway. So I don't know if, because your question is, do we need these? Well, we're already addressing agriculture in a different way. So I don't know if I would say we need it. I would say it's available. And I would say that this group gets to decide if I take it to the board and let them decide if we need it. But I make sure that I bring things to you as they're available. And so that's why these three are available to us today. And that's why we had the presentation last month.
Yeah, and that sounds good. I think what goes through my mind is that since library media is so specialized, the test itself, and I haven't looked at the test, so I don't know, but it requires an internship. And I know that we have several endorsements. Like if you're endorsed in middle school math, you cannot add on elementary through testing by passing the praxis. Same thing I think it is that if you have an endorsement in middle school math, you can't add on special ed by just testing because of those particular areas. And for library media, it just seems to fall into that same group that maybe the testing part should have some weight to it, but it's just so different from what the other endorsements are. Yeah.
And I will echo, I actually spoke to a school librarian who is a national board certified teacher. And the response was very visceral, like that it's too expansive and there are too many contingency points to just say, okay, here's a test check. That means that I can now add this.
I happen to be married to one of those as well. So national board librarian. So that's all I'll say. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
One last round of applause.
I asked Malik to come and join us, even though he made his presentation last month, in case you all had more specific questions. Are there any other questions? We will decide on whether or not you're going to recommend it here in just a second, but I want to make sure that he's available for your questions before we get to that point.
I actually want to pose a question. If there's a possible consideration to approve these assessments as acceptable in Virginia, and I'm asking this not even, I don't really have any background experience, but not depending on how the voting members, want to move forward. But if there was a possibility that there wasn't a desire to approve these to recommend to the Board of Ed to approve it to meet content requirements, is there another step that we could take to at least consider having the assessments approved in Virginia that would be able to stop short of also then recommending that they, at least at this time, that they be approved to meet content? Do you know where I'm trying to go with this? To get at least the assessments on the list in Virginia, so then we could at least determine, okay, then how do we move forward after that? It's possible that maybe one of these could be accepted to meet content as long as it still had a required internship built in, something that's probably more of a regulatory process.
Yeah. So if we recommend them to the board and the board approves them, that kicks into effect what I said at the beginning. They can be used to substitute for content, just like all the other ones. So if we wanted to make a recommendation that included language in the regs, that's a regulatory change. I'm not against that. I'm just saying that's not going to happen fast. That's going to go into just like our other regulatory changes. We're talking probably a year, maybe more before that would even make it through the full process. And we'd need a lot more information for you all and from you all before I took it to the board. But just to add them as assessments, that can be recommended from here, and it doesn't have to be all three. You can take 1, 2, or 3, or none.
All right, I appreciate that. I just wanted to reiterate, one of the reasons we brought these three, just from the licensure side, is when I checked with my team on what are any, topics, content area topics that we received the most requests about, the desire to have an assessment to meet content. These are the three that stood out from feedback that we get from divisions, but I also completely understand the concerns that we've heard and respect the decision of the board. Certainly it all makes a lot of sense to me. We were just working off of feedback that we received just for these three in particular. Hey, there are divisions coming to us saying we could really use this as an opportunity for someone to be able to add that endorsement, but I also understand some of the barriers and concerns around that as well. But just for the board's sake, I wanted you to have an understanding of why we would have brought these three.
Yeah, our licensure specialists were very positive about adding these, but that doesn't mean their opinions are the only opinions that matter. But you should know that they work with this all day long. So
I have so many English teachers, fully licensed English teachers that are, because we can't find theater ed eligible teachers. Teachers are asked to teach it, and they just don't have enough of the content coursework to be eligible through the current grads. So if they could take a theater praxis, to me, that would be a great option. But the other two tests, I do agree, need either internships or additional curriculum.
more parameters.
If we as a could agree that the theater praxis would be an option, that would be a great option for me as a licensure specialist. I am open if others disagree with that. It's whatever we collectively feel as a board.
And Shelby, I think that's a fantastic idea. We have the theater endorsement, but our local schools have stopped offering theater classes. And so we have one school that offers a 1-hour theater class. So I can't run a student teacher through because it would take them 2 or 3 years to finish student teaching at 1 hour per day. So I see the need that we need to have another route so that people could get endorsed in that. So I'm all for the theater. I think that's a great idea. I think just the library media, and I don't know enough about agriculture. We don't have that endorsement, but for library media, that's where I think yeah.
By itself, and I'm not proficient in all of the curriculum or the teaching of that content area. I know it's from licensure, again, it's a very hard area to staff, but I cannot speak to whether that test alone would be sufficient. And I'm going to go with your background and saying that it is not. But the theater praxis, I feel like if they could take that, and especially if they have a background in with English, with drama classes and literature pertaining to that, I would be comfortable with that.
I want to add, part of the reason why we can't find agricultural education teachers resides at the teacher prep area, particularly from agricultural mechanics. And when you have folks that have a degree in animal science and then they go to become an agricultural education teacher, it becomes an issue because you must have the agricultural mechanics component, because that means that you can actually then teach any course that you're now hired to teach. And that's something that needs to be addressed with Virginia Tech respectfully, Virginia State respectfully, because those are the two entities in Virginia that actually will produce an agricultural education teacher. Now, if you go outside the state, University of Mount Olive, Oklahoma State, different, right? And it goes back to the conversation that we had earlier when there was a shift to say that you needed to have a master's to teach, because that's what the legislation said. The focal point changed to graduate work and not undergraduate work, which is where everything was already in place. All the courses were seamless. And when that change happened, it had a lot of unintended consequences. And now we're seeing some of the fruits of that at this point. So if we could maybe switch back, look at some of those items a little more in particular, and focus on making sure that we have our well-rounded ag ed teachers who can earn licensure, it will fix itself, but that's where the problem resides.
Teacher who has a background in a 4-year degree of theater. My only concern is it's a performing arts. It's a performing arts teaching thing. So like people who are in the music department and people who are in the art department, it's very hands-on. Theater is also very hands-on. So just giving a test, I could have passed that test probably my freshman year in college. I was not qualified to do that. So it is very important, I think, that they do go through an internship or some kind of hands-on experience than just a test. I think that you're kind of selling them short. And I have a lot of teachers that are English teachers, and I'm not sure they're qualified to teach the theater section. But I get where you're coming from. I just wanted to put that out there. That's part of that performing arts. So just giving a test, I don't know if that qualifies them to teach that area.
As one of the people who is licensed in English and then taught theater, I completely agree. I had no business teaching theater and I had no idea what I was doing, and I was doing a disservice to the students. But my principal desperately needed someone, or she was going to cancel the theater program. So I was like, I'll do it. Sure, I'll do it for a year. And it was not good. But now she has a real theater teacher, and the program didn't get canceled. So I agree with you.
And a question, I was along the same lines, we were thinking about this. Is this supposed to be just for the literature of theater, or is this actually mounting productions? Or you've got to direct the show, you've got blocking to worry about, you've got lighting to worry, you've got set construction to worry about, all these other elements involved in putting on a show. Not just, if it was just for the literature of it, that's different. But with all the other elements, that I said, which make it a performing art, if it depends on what is the goal, what is the end product that you're looking for?
Programs for the performing arts, for music and well as theater, musical theater. I have done the degree program for English. There's no connection whatsoever to what you have to do to get a degree in one of the performing arts and the field of English.
You have one back here?
This is just a little bit of a thought, and it's not really a pro or con because I don't know that I have enough knowledge of the theater and English endorsements to speak to it directly. But speaking from our rural school division, I'm very unlikely to be able to mount a theater program without additional licensure or flexibility, right? So that's not a pro or con because I totally see all the points. But that's part of the concern I would have as a rural superintendent.
Everybody ready to move on to the next step? Okay, I'll let you guide the next two steps. And you can break it up as much as you can break that up if you want.
And I'm correct in September 8th virtual and any other. Okay. So we have two items before us, and we'll begin with item number 1 with recommendations to approve the meeting dates for 2025, 2026. And I'll read those to you again. They are Monday, September 8th to be virtual, Monday, October 6th in person, Monday, November 3rd in person, Monday, January 12th in person, Monday, March 23rd in person, Monday, April 20th in person, Monday, May 4th as a backup date with a virtual to be determined. What is the pleasure of the group? And that's 6, and we rarely have past 5 meetings.
5 is what we would get.
Dr. Arnold?
Yes, I'm sitting here thinking about those dates. 5 are required.
Yes, sir.
The first one is going to be a virtual meeting in September. So we're looking at the potential of having one additional virtual day. Correct? All right. And so the January meeting day, if it were eliminated, would we still have, we will still meet the 5, correct?
Yes, sir.
Without May.
That is correct. May is the backup date.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, I would like then to move.
Hold on, before you do that, I do want to note, in past years, we've had updates, legislative updates, and that has been in January meetings. I do want to say that before you make that motion. Because that's all you're going, but I want to make sure you knew that's why that January date was there.
But did we have a January meeting this year?
No, and we didn't get any legislative updates.
Yeah. Madam Chair, I would like to move that we adopt the meeting dates for next year. With the September 8th date being virtual. And the April meeting being the final meeting of the year. And the January meeting being eliminated.
Okay, so the motion is on the floor and it needs a second. Motion dies for lack of a second. So back to the will of the body for recommendations for our meeting schedule for 2025, 2026.
I move that we approve the schedule of meetings as presented. I'm sorry.
Motion's been made and properly seconded to adopt the meeting schedule as presented. Is there any discussion? Yes, sir.
Would you just display those dates?
Okay, I'm gonna need him to bring it. That's why I wrote it down.
Where did I put it? Oh, no.
January meeting virtual, since it's it could be weather that impacts that meeting for in-person And I'll still go back and say that first meeting, because it's your first meeting of the year, I don't know if you all should really make it a virtual meeting. It's the first meeting that everybody would come to, so maybe October could be virtual or something like that, but it just seems your first meeting of the year, you would have it in person. And then dealing with weather, maybe consider a winter meeting as a virtual. Just a thought.
So to answer your first part of the question, January could still be a virtual meeting as we determined as we're going through. Let's say that everything worked out the way it's on the schedule and we had September 8th, October 6th, November 3rd. So we have 3 meetings in already to get to 5. If we had a virtual one on the 12th, because of weather or whatever reason, all we would need is to get one of those other ones in to meet our 5 requirements. So even if we did virtual on the 8th, we still have that other virtual option. If we didn't have September 8th as a virtual and it was in person and we went to January 12th, we would have an option for a virtual after that. And that would still be a choice we could make later in the year. I think that answers your question.
Any other discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Okay. Yep, go back to y'all. Okay, so we'll go to item 2 regarding new praxis tests for librarian, agricultural, and theater. And as Rob had mentioned earlier, this can be a vote of 1, 2, 3, or none. What is the pleasure of the group?
I just have one more comment to add about the theater praxis. Right now, any fully licensed teacher can add theater to their license by taking 15 credits of theater coursework. There's no internship for that. It's just 3 college classes. So if there was an option to do it by testing, it's a lot cheaper for a teacher to do that than to take 3 college classes. So I'm still in favor if we could put an option out there for the theater praxis. And that's the only other thing I wanted to add for that. It's 15 credits if you're fully licensed to do it as an add-on. Which
Brian?
is what they if that.
So if it pleases the chair and the body, I'm thinking that we're probably going to have to vote on each separately. So I'm not sure if that requires a motion, but I'd be happy to make that motion that we vote on each of the 3 separately.
Yes.
About the theater one, if we are approving the praxis for theater, does that remove the ability of someone with an English endorsement to continue teaching theater in the
No.
future?
If they right now, if you're fully licensed in English and they want you to teach theater, you have to go to take the 3 college classes to add it. Because there's no testing option.
After how long?
There's no time limit. You just have to go take 3 college courses. So however long it would take you as a teacher to go pick up those 3 college courses, pay for them, take them, and get a transcript to your person at your division that could then submit the transcript, pay the licensure fee to add it to your license. And once it's added, then you could teach theater. That's how it can be done now. And that's the only way it could be done. And you could be endorsed in anything. You could have a math endorsement. You could have any endorsement, although it tends to, mostly it's the English teachers that are adding it.
I was
But
under
that's
the
their
impression,
only option if they want to add theater.
I thought they could indefinitely teach theater as long as they were endorsed in English.
No.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Any teacher in my division that doesn't have theater arts and is teaching it is teaching out of compliance.
Okay.
And I don't like that.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
would have helped me to take
I'm
classes.
coming down on them. And I don't like that. I want them to be properly licensed. So, yeah, this is giving somebody a much less expensive, challenging way if they really want to teach that class and they didn't go through theater ed in college, and not many colleges, as Andy says he doesn't offer it. You don't have a lot of approved programs that offer it, probably for a similar reason that they don't, because, and as she said, there are not a lot of schools that teach it. My county does have a lot of theater programs at the high schools, but I struggle to find teachers that I can properly license to teach it. So this would just give my teachers, or any division, teachers who are licensed already in something else, an option to add it by not having to go back and pick up college courses that are 3 credits each and pay for classes to take 15 credit hours and turn a transcript in and then pay the fee to add the endorsement. Here they could pay like $135 for the praxis test and then pay the fee back.
Again, it's a performing arts.
It's a performance.
Performing arts thing. So like you're saying that anyone with English degree or whatever could go and do theater.
Once they've taken the
But
college
you're
course.
taking a test, I could take, like I said, I could take a test and pass it at freshman year.
Right.
But like going through at least 5 classes will give me some background of what theater is about and like that, but you're missing that piece, you know what I mean? Just taking, it's lowering the standards for that point.
That's the way it feels. That's why I was asking if you're talking about maybe the literature of theater.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Yes.
But if the goal is to put on a production and to be able to educate it, whether it's a black box or a proscenium production, whatever, a test isn't gonna do it.
Yeah, because they're not gonna have that knowledge, that background knowledge. And whether they have the funding or not, you take those 5 classes will give them a little bit of support and a little bit of knowledge, whereas just memorizing facts for a test. I mean, I don't know if I would put. I don't, anyway, either way, I do see your point.
Yeah.
I do. I just coming from a background like that and going through a 4-year program and getting that, there's a lot to it. And so when you teach it, you do have to have some kind of background knowledge.
I'm sure it's very different from going through the whole program and just taking
I
that.
don't guess that there's a shortage, but there has been a shortage.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
And the goal is to give the students the education in the area that they need.
Yeah.
Again, if it's to be a performing art, a production, not just the literature of theater. But literature of theater is great on its own. But I don't think that's what the target is here.
Yeah.
The target is a theater program, which means production. I mean,
Yeah.
Mrs. I think Ms. Halterman. Did you want the microphone back?
Yes, I would move that we treat each of these 3 test options as separate matters and move that we vote on each separately.
Is there a second?
second.
Motion's been made and properly seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. We'll begin with voting on the item 2, librarian praxis. Is there a motion?
If we are not in favor, can I word the motion in such a way?
Well, you don't even have to make a motion. It can fall to the floor.
Okay, thank you.
Hearing none, seems as the item falls to the floor. We'll move to item 2B, agricultural education. Hearing and seeing none, item falls to the floor. Moving to item 2C, theater arts. Okay,
Motion to approve a praxis for theater arts.
is there a second? Motion's been made and properly seconded to add a praxis for theater arts. Is there any discussion? She's coming. Oh, to your left.
This really would only affect those schools that offer a theater class. Does not preclude any school who may want a science teacher to put on a production. It's only if you're offering a class for credit in theater or theater arts, correct?
Any further discussion? Oh, hold on, Megan.
I'm just playing devil's advocate. Some of those classes are performing classes as theater classes that are offered. So those performing classes is what I'm trying to get at. I'm not sure that person would be qualified to teach a performing class. That's all.
So just a question for those of you, I'm not a theater person. Are there safety considerations to take into account for somebody who's running a theater program, I'm thinking lighting and stagecraft? What does that entail safety wise?
I'm not in high school, so I
I would take a side note on that. Haven't seen it done. You must be taught safety and construction. That's one of the things that I had said earlier. You have to do that. Otherwise that you are playing with fire because you're dealing with electrical components. You're dealing with things that are load bearing. That is not something you Google. You are taught what you are and are not to do.
And dealing with lighting, you're dealing with electricity.
Yes, electrical.
Climbing ladders.
Mm-hmm. So,
Yeah, there's a lot of,
mm-hmm.
that's an area I work in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to speak against the motion, but with some hopeful considerations for the future. I mean, for the sake of someone who also researches rural schools and the ability for rural schools to fulfill, all of their teaching positions and everything else they'd like to, it's my understanding that someone could be asked to teach theater, but then have to take courses toward understanding, what it is they're doing and to get the endorsement. So if there are, things that are inhibiting people from schools from being able to offer these theater programs, and there needs to be more flexibility, I don't think that just having a test is the answer, because I do think it's important performing arts that can't just be taught, or through passage of a test. But if we have to look in the future at more flexibility in some way, more encouragement, of, you know, theater endorsements, more things universities could be doing. I mean, are these courses offered online? Are these experiences, I'm just trying to think of ways to meet the needs that are being expressed for people that support this motion, but not, lessening it in the actual what's delivered to students in the schools. So that's all. Just a word of like, I really hope that we can consider possibilities moving forward if this is not successful.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Any other further discussion? I'll say as a point of personal privilege, I am really cold and I know there's heat in the hallway. So I'm going to go ahead and call question so we can get some heat. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. All those opposed?
No.
Yeah, chair slightly in doubt, but I think I know how that went. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand or stand. Okay, thank you. Put your hands down. All those opposed, please. Okay, motion fails. Thank you, Mr. Gilstrap.
Didn't want to do that. Dr. Lewis, you here? I don't think he is. Dr. Osei? Okay, so no liaison reports today. Any announcements or discussions by Abtel members?
Something that had come up, I think in our last Abtel meeting was a question about I Teach. And so I did a little bit of investigating to see if I Teach was accredited by CAPE.
Mhm.
And I saw that on CAPE's website that if you click on Virginia, I Teach is not listed there as an approved pathway.
Mhm.
When I clicked on Texas, I Teach is, and I just wanted to clarify to maybe does that need to be added on there or is it not? Is it because I think I went to the I Teach website and it had in the Virginia website, it showed CAPE accreditation in the first two lines. And I thought maybe this is a misprint or maybe it's not on CAPE's website. But I think with the question that we had last time, maybe we need some clarification is I Teach approved by CAPE in Virginia or does it need to be?
So we did bring this up last time. I'm sure it just probably went right on by. They are accredited. They have the National CAPE accreditation. They do not have a Virginia CAPE accreditation. And we've actually been working with them. Jonelle, if you're wanting to speak at all, unless you're welcome to as well. We have been working with them on how we can verify the factors that would be in a Virginia CAPE accreditation, but there is no such thing for them as a Virginia CAPE accreditation. They have multiple states. Their data would be based on multiple state standards. It wouldn't just be based on Virginia standards. That's not the way the board approved them. When the board made their approval to use them, they did not say that that I Teach had to be accredited in Virginia. They just said they had to hold a CAPE accreditation. So it is a maybe language concern. During the evaluation period, we are evaluating them on as much data as we can as it pertains to Virginia and not other states. And when it comes time for their renewal period, I will most likely be making a recommendation to the board to amend their language. But the language they used back in June of 2023 was that they maintain CAPE accreditation, and they do have CAPE accreditation. So they do meet that requirement. Am I speaking as accurately as you think I can, or should I say it differently? I know you have an opinion on this, so. Her and I have talked about this multiple times, and it is kind of tricky. Mhm. Mhm.
I don't want to put my opinion on it, but
Sure.
I understand that.
You don't have to speak. I just wanted you to have the opportunity to speak.
Well,
We will speak, I'm sure, here in just a few minutes.
I just want to make sure that, if.
They meet the requirement
Yeah.
that they were given, yeah.
And I assume that they would have to go through the same kind of standards and reviews and everything of what an EPP would have to go through and collect the data and report on it in the same way. Is that?
They do it, but they do it through their national lens. So like the data that you report would only be students that you have here, and they have students in multiple states. So, and they have data points for multiple states. So that's why when I say in the review time, we are trying to get as much Virginia specific data so that we can show and help them show whether or not they're effective or not. Because that's really what it comes down to is, are they effectively preparing teachers for the classroom? And that's a big if, because there's lots of factors to that. It's not just CAPE accreditation for you all. That's not the only factor we would use for you all. I mean, is that fair to say? Yeah.
So in that light, do they go through program approval in Virginia?
So their programs aren't like your programs with multiple program approval steps with coursework like that. That's not the way their program approval was. It's different than yours.
In terms of the national CAPE accreditation process, are those documents or evidence or anything like that publicly available? I'm just curious to understand more what it means to be nationally accredited versus state accredited.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if those are available. It's a private company, so I don't know if they're. Any other announcements or discussions?
Not on this topic, Robert, you will share the slides today.
Absolutely. I don't share them ahead of time because then if I do, then I have to share them out to the entire world and they're not always available before, especially when we have outside speakers sometimes. But I do share them out after. I think you can dismiss us to lunch.
Okay. All right, everyone. At this point, we will be moving to adjournment. Before I do adjourn, I do want to let you know, no, you did not get a lunch order. It's going to be buffet out in the cafeteria area, and we will be having our standing committee meetings. Is that something we want to bring back the food in here or out there?
Up to each committee.
Okay, so please see your respective individual, what they would like to do. I know last time we pretty much met as a whole group, so I'm not sure if we're going to do that today. However, notice our topic is outreach ideas over the summer months, since we won't meet again until September. With that being said, before we adjourn, I want to say thank you for the work that you've done with us this year. Thank you to our outgoing members for your service to this committee and to education. And I hope that each of you have a wonderful summer and at some point have a break where you can just refresh, re-energize, and refuel for pouring out your hearts, your minds, your souls into making sure that we do great things in education in the Commonwealth for students and for educators. With that being said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. I saw Andy Cox's head move. There's a second. I don't think that's debatable or amendable, but it is definitely less votable. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, like sign? Okay, I didn't count that. Any abstentions? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. You know what I'm saying? Like, disappointed personal privilege, a fireplace. Let's go.
You didn't have anything.